כל החיים, משורה לשחרר רק המוות. בימים אדומים של פרעות ודמים, הלילות השמונים של ייאוש. בערים בכפרים את דגלנו נרים, ועלה הגנה וחינות. לא יעשו פשוט כהמון עבדים, ולשתות במחאה לדבר. ברצוננו להיות לעולם נכונים, חלומנו למות בארצנו. בימים אדומים של פרעות ודמים, בלילות השחורים של ייאוש. ולכן בכפרים את דגלנו נרים, ועלה הגנה וחינות.
Oh, damn it. No sound. All right. We'll start from the beginning again. Thank you, Whitey Boy. Thank you, Whitey Boy. Okay, let's start this again. This is Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov, and this is the World Alliance of Qara'im Shabbat Torah study. And this week we are going to be studying. Thank you for letting me know, Whitey Boy. This is why I need an engineer. I need an engineer. Okay, we're going to be studying Parshat Vayechi, which is the end of the book of Genesis. And I was lamenting to nobody because I was on mute. I was lamenting the fact that we've gone so quickly through the book of Genesis. I can't believe we're at the end of the book of Genesis. And maybe it would even be a good idea in the future not to go according to the pace. I've been sticking to the rabbinical Parshat Shavua. I shouldn't even say rabbinical. I mean, there are different calendars, but the most common one, I guess it's the Ashkenazi. I pick it off this website, Safari, so I assume it's the Ashkenazi one. And it does, on the one hand, it keeps me honest because it makes me move forward. Because otherwise, I might get bogged down in every sentence, every word. We'd never get through even Genesis chapter 1. So that's the good side. But on the other hand, it's a little bit too fast for my liking because as you see each week, we don't really finish the parsha. and it leaves us, missing out on parts of the Torah. So who knows? Maybe next year I'll do it a little bit differently. At any rate, we shall see. Thank you for joining me and joining the World Alliance of Qara'im for the Shabbat Torah talk. So before we get started on the actual Torah, I will give what I've come to call, I guess now, my monologue regarding the war, the quote unquote war in Israel. And I can only go by my gut feeling. And I have to say that I've noticed over the years that my gut feeling is often wrong on the short term, but usually right on the long term. So I'll just give an example. For decades, I guess starting, oh my God, probably 20 years ago, if not more, I started telling people that the United States was going to soon become a dangerous place for Jews, that the Jews would not be welcome there at all, and that it would end in destruction for the Jews there. They'd either be kicked out or killed or pogroms or a combination of all for various reasons. And people laughed at me. They literally laughed at me. They thought I was off my rocker. Even though Rabbi Kahana had already said similar things, I guess they laughed at him too. And part of where I got it from was Rabbi Kahana's point of view. I make no qualms about the fact that I was a Kahanist, and if I would still be a Kahanist, I still am a Kahanist to the degree that I agree with Rabbi Kahana. That's circular reasoning. That's almost a tautology. In other words, there are many things I agree with Rabbi Kahana and Kahanists on, but the one thing I don't agree with is what their ultimate goal is to turn Israel into not a biblical state. They may claim they're going to turn it into a biblical state, but what they really want to do is turn it into a Pharisaic/Talmudic state, and that I cannot tolerate, and nobody in Israel will tolerate that. In fact, as I've said a number of times now, the whole argument over the judicial reform quagmire in Israel over the past year, 2 years, was really a fight between the secular. They always say some people will claim it's a fight between the secular and the less informed, or the ones who look at it on a very shallow basis will say it's a fight between the left and the right. But really, if you look at it more closely, many people say it's a fight between the secular and the religious. But that's not even really true. What it really is a fight between the anti-rabbinites and the pro-rabbinites, because all of the people who are behind this, I won't say all, but many of the people who are behind the judicial reform move are basically, they're dati, meaning they are Pharisees. They are rabbinical Jews. And their ultimate goal, what they really ultimately want to do, is they want to set up a Pharisaic/Talmudic state in the land of Israel. And then you have a backlash to that, which are the in rough terms, the Chelonim, who don't want it, and they want to keep a secular, liberal Western state. But what they don't realize, or what they maybe themselves don't even realize, the Chelonim, is what they really don't want is a Talmudic state. And I have a feeling that, I don't have a feeling, my gut tells me that if we were to present, I don't know who we means, whoever were to present, a future for Israel, not based on the Pharisees and the Talmud, but based on the Tanakh, in other words, Karaism, if you want to call it that, Tanach-only, whatever label you want to give it, then there would be a lot less opposition to it from the left. There would be opposition, ironically, from the right, from the religious, because they don't want a biblical state. They consider, bizarrely and ironically, they consider the Old Testament to be outdated. They have their new form of Judaism, their reform Judaism, known as Pharisaic Judaism. That is, I always like to call it, the first major reform Judaism movement in history. That's not exactly true, but it's a nice soundbite. So, but that's essentially what they are loyal to. They are loyal to their Talmud. They're loyal to their rabbis. They're loyal to their Chachamim. And most of the rest of the nation can't stand the Pharisees and want nothing to do with the Pharisees, and do not want a Pharisaic/Talmudic state. And so they they backlash against it. That's not really a verb, but I'll turn it into a verb. They backlash against it, and they become secular. They align with the West. They align with with the liberal West, because the liberal West, in their eyes, will protect them from a takeover by what they would call religious fanatics who want to set up a theocracy. Okay, and these people who are backlashing against the dati, the religious, the quote unquote religious, the right wing, what they're really backlashing against, and they may not, and they don't even realize it, is rabbinical / Pharisaic Judaism. And if, again, to repeat myself, which I tend to do, then sometimes on purpose, because the Torah repeats itself. Anyone who's a teacher knows that you need to repeat yourself. I've been a teacher many times in front of classrooms. I worked as a teacher for about a year and a half in New York before I came to Israel, and I was a teacher for about a year and a half in Israel, believe it or not. And that's some interesting stories there. But at any rate, so lest I repeat myself, I can't repeat myself because I forgot what I was going to say. But at any rate, the point is that that I think that the only solution is non-Pharisaic / non-Pharisaic / space Karaite or Tanach-only Judaism, and then there would be a lot less resistance, not only from other Jews, but from the world, because one of the main sources of anti-Semitism, in my eyes, is rabbinical Judaism, Talmudic / rabbinical Judaism. I think that many people, Christians and Muslims and others included, have great respect for the Old Testament. I mean, both Christians and Muslims consider our prophets, the prophets of the Old Testament, the prophets of the Tanakh, to be prophets. That's why you'll see in Islamic society, you'll see so many people named Ibrahim and Ishaq and even Yaqub. Even if they're not Jewish, they might be named Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. They might be named Dawood. They might be named Suleiman, which is Solomon. They are named after our kings and prophets. And what they really hate, what they really despise, is the same thing that the Chilonim, the left wing in Tel Aviv, despise, which is rabbinical / Talmudic Judaism. They feel there's something wrong with this, something off about it. And indeed there is. We can go into great detail about this. I have a number of very, very interesting articles on the subject showing how there's a wonderful scholar named David Daub. He died, I think, in the early 2000s. And he has written a number of articles about how Pharisaic forms of extrapolation, or what they call hermeneutics, are on the text of the Torah, are heavily based in Hellenistic rhetoric, or heavily based in Hellenistic, or under the influence of Hellenistic thought patterns. And there are a lot of things written about this. So that's the obvious solution. When and if it's going to happen, who knows? Okay, so now on to the war. Let's talk a little bit about the war. So talking about Tchushat Beten, talking about gut feeling, and that's how you say it in modern Hebrew, Tchushat Beten. Tchushat means a feeling. Chash means to feel, but in a kind of to perceive or to feel on a very visceral level. It's different from lahargish. Chash means like to, I don't know, I feel something's wrong or something like that, right? So tchusha is a feeling, and beten means a belly, so a gut feeling. So we would say it in modern Hebrew, tchushat beten. So my gut feeling regarding the war is it's going totally horribly in the wrong direction. And as I've mentioned a lot, I listen to a lot of commentary on the war, and you have two sides. You have two main sides to this commentary, not surprisingly, the kind of pro-Israel side and the kind of anti-Israel side. And the anti-Israel side, they're vicious anti-Semites. I listened to this guy named Judge Napolitano. I mean, this guy is a true anti-Semite. I don't care. He says on his show he's not. He's just anti-Israel. This scumbag, this living scum. Hushat Shuka Aime Kadani, Shabbat Shalom. This scumbag, Judge Napolitano, is truly an anti-Semite, and he brings on the most rabidly anti-Israel, Israel-hating guests, some of them Jews, that you can ever possibly imagine. And so I'll listen to that kind of, rhetoric, and I'll also listen to the pro-Israel rhetoric. And I'll listen to more objective, objective commentary on the war. So one that I find is pretty objective, which I like a lot, is called the Tom Nash Report. You can check it out. And then you have your pro-Israel, like you have Carolyn Glick, and you have, I don't know, a bunch of others. At any rate, all the pro-Israel ones say that Israel is, kicking butt. It's only a matter of time before Hamas is wiped out, and it's just, it's a done deal. It's a fait accompli. Fait accompli. It's a done deal, right? So, and all the anti-Israel ones, they say that the IDF is getting bogged down in Hamas, that the Israel is not reporting all the deaths of the Israeli soldiers, which that's absolutely not true, because because anyone who's, in Israel, everyone one way or another knows everyone else. There's a very, very few degrees of separation between Jews and Israel. And if someone's death were not reported, it would be known very, very quickly among the populace. So that's a bunch of baloney. But they are pointing out that the IDF is losing soldiers every day, that there are many more injured. I don't know what the official numbers from Israel are on injured soldiers, but I'm pretty sure it's in the thousands. The economy is suffering because you have hundreds of thousands of people away from work, away from running their businesses. And this has been all going on. And then, of course, you have the threat of Hezbollah on the north. You have the Houthi Tutsis in Yemen. You have the militias in Syria and Iraq. You have Iran itself, and behind all of them, you've got, of course, Russia and probably China. And so, as I was mentioning, the anti-Israel side, they say that Israel is getting very bogged down in the Gaza Strip, and I think the truth is somewhere in between. But I think that Israel is making a huge mistake, and that is the fact that we're taking so long to execute this war. I will find, if I can find it here, the quote from Sun Tzu. I think I posted it this week on my Facebook. Sun Tzu, long war. Let's see here. So here it is. I'll just read it. Put it on the screen, actually. I'll just read it. Okay. Sun Tzu said, this is chapter 2, Waging War. Sun Tzu said, in the operations of war, let me put it on the screen. Share screen, settings, present, share screen, art of war, share. My face can go over there. Okay. So Sun Tzu said, let me make this bigger. There we go. Sun Tzu said, so again, this is Sun Tzu, Art of War, Chapter 2. Sun Tzu said, in the operations of war, where there are in the field 1,000 swift chariots, as many heavy chariots, and 100,000 mail-clad soldiers, and Israel has 300,000 deployed, with provisions enough to carry them 1,000 li, that's some measure of distance, the expenditure at home and at the front, including entertainment of guests, small items such as glue and paint, and some spent on chariots and armor, will reach a total of 1,000 ounces of silver per day. So we're not going to sit here and translate that into modern terms, but basically what he's trying to say is that every day of war costs the country that's waging the war money, a lot of money, right? There was I think I also put this on Facebook maybe a month or two ago, about 2 months ago probably. There was an assessment in, I believe it was it the Wall Street Journal? No, it was in Forbes, I think. Either the Wall Street Journal or Forbes, that calculated the cost, Shabbat Shalom, Ruben Skari, that calculated the cost of Israel's war in Gaza per day at $250 million. Okay? So let's extrapolate a little bit. $250 million a day They're fighting 7 days a week. So that's 170. I'm sorry, that's $1.75 billion. Rounded down to $1.5 billion per week. There are approximately 4 weeks in a month. Okay, so it's $6 billion a month. The war has now been going on close to 3 months, so that's $18 billion. Okay, Shabbat Shalom Yoshi Ben, $18 billion. If the war goes on for another 3 months, that's now $36 billion. Okay, so we're talking about huge, huge, huge amounts of money that are being expended every day. Okay, so we'll go on here. Verse 2 of Sun Tzu, The Art of War, chapter 2. Excuse me. When you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, then men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor means their enthusiasm, will be damped. If you lay siege to a town, you will exhaust your strength. We are essentially laying siege to a number of towns in Gaza, including Gaza City itself. Verse 3, again, if the campaign is protracted means prolongated, okay, prolonged, the resources of the state will not be equal to the strain. In other words, the state will buckle under the strain of war, monetarily, in terms of morale, in terms of manpower, in terms of armament, because when weapons go into war, or when war material is placed in battle, then it can get damaged and it has to be fixed and all of this kind of stuff. Verse 4. Now, when your weapons are dulled, your ardor damped, your strength exhausted, and your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. Then no man, however wise, will be able to avert the consequences that must ensue. Let's read this again. When your weapons are dulled, your ardor damped, your strength exhausted, your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. In other words, your extreme distress. Then no man, however wise, will be able to avert the consequences that must ensue. Thus, though we have heard of stupid haste in war, cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. And then it goes on. It's one of my favorite verses. I've been saying this actually for decades. Bring war material from home, but forage on the enemy. So I don't know if I should go into how I use that. It doesn't matter. At any rate, so anywho, you're in the wrong business. What business are you in, and what business should you be in? So anywho, that's the story. We now have, so the 6-day war was lasted, let's see, how long? Let me think about it for a second. Was it 7 days, 8 days? Oh, no, it was 6 days, right? The 6-day war lasted 6 days. The Yom Kippur War lasted, I think, approximately 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And Israel was on the brink at the beginning of that war. And by the way, if you want to check out a great movie, which I saw for the first time this week, you can watch Golda. You can find it online for free if you look hard enough. That's the way I saw it. And you can watch Golda. And I thought it was a really, really good movie. I don't think Golda Meir was a very good prime minister, but I thought the movie was very good. And really what the movie is about, as much as it's about Golda, it's also about the Yom Kippur War. It basically starts at the beginning of the Yom Kippur War, or right before the Yom Kippur War, and it basically ends, aside from the last scene, which is years later when she's on her deathbed. Oh, I shouldn't give it away, but well, I guess we all know she dies eventually because she ain't around anymore. But and it ends basically when peace is made between Israel and the Egyptians. So watch it, and you'll get a nice idea, assuming it's accurate. It seems pretty accurate. It seemed very accurate, actually. You'll get a nice idea of how Israel carried out the Yom Kippur War, and it lasted only about 14 days or so, about 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? So there were the two last major wars that Israel fought. Since then, it's fought a bunch of little skirmishes. I mean, yes, they call it the first Lebanon War, the second Lebanon War, but those weren't wars on the scale of the 6-day war, the 48 war, the 67 war, and the Yom Kippur War. So the point being that those wars were over very quickly, okay? and especially the 6 Day War was over in 6 days, and it resulted in massive victories for Israel. Israel took control of the Sinai Desert, took control of the Golan Heights, took control of the entire West Bank, the East, including East Jerusalem, including the Temple Mount, and so on and so forth. And so now we have a quote-unquote war that has gone on for almost 3 months for a little piece of land. Okay, so 6 days. In 6 days in 1967, Israel was able to double, triple, I don't remember, including the Sinai Peninsula, triple its territory. I don't remember exactly, but massively increase its territory. And now, in almost 3 months, Israel has not even been able to conquer this piddling little tract of land known as Gaza. And this is because Israel is, well, we all know why. There are a lot of reasons. It's complex, right? The surface reason is that Israel has to listen to the dictates of the United States and the West, especially the United States, or else Israel is afraid that the United States will abandon her, and so Israel has to, be very nice to the Gazan civilians. But there are actually more reasons behind it, and again, really, what it comes down to, again, is a fight between. If you really analyze it, it really comes down to an internal fight in Israel between the Chilonim, the left-wingers, and left-winger/secular, and the Dati'im, the right-wing / quote-unquote religious / Pharisaic Talmudic Jews. And really, the left wing does not want great victory, just as they did in 67. So Moshe Dayan gave famously, I think, on the same day that Israel conquered the Temple Mount, he took the keys and he gave it back to the Waqf, to the Jordanian authorities that were in control of the Temple Mount. But really, the left does not want great victory for Israel, because great victory for Israel is reinforcing messianic visions and could result in the establishment of a Pharisaic / Talmudic state. So for the same reason that we had the great division in Israel over the past couple of years regarding the judicial reform in Israel, if you've been following that, as I mentioned earlier, the reason behind that is again, the left, the secular / left, forging a backlash, and I don't disagree with them, against the right / religious, because they understand that the right / religious, their ultimate goal is to establish a Pharisaic / Talmudic state. So that's the same reason, besides the fact that Israel is kowtowing to the West, to the United States of America. The other reason behind it is that the left really does not want great victory for Israel. They want to keep Israel basically at the status quo, because great victory for Israel means the messianic aligned Jews, and when I say messianic in this sense, I don't mean Christian messianics. I mean those with who believe that the end of days are near. It galvanizes them, and then they might set up a Talmudic / Pharisaic state rather than the current left-wing secular one. So this is really, I think, the main reason of what's going on, or of the main reason, the main explanation for what's going on in Israel, both in the years leading up to this war, which were maybe defined by the judicial reform controversy in Israel, and in the current quote-unquote war in Gaza. Remember, the left wing does not really want a smashing victory against the enemy. They do not want to expand the territory of Israel, because they fear that will lead to a Pharisaic Talmudic state. And unlike the right wing in Israel, I understand them. I really understand the left wing, and I really understand the Chilonim. I really do, because I don't want a Pharisaic Talmudic state either. I would rather have a secular, liberal, Western aligned state any day over a Pharisaic Talmudic state. What I do want is a biblical / Tanach-only / Karaite state. That goes without saying. But I certainly don't want a Pharisaic / Talmudic state. So I actually understand the left. I also understand the right. But I think that the only solution here is that both of these false philosophies are discarded. I've always given the analogy again of the God of Tel Aviv being America in the West, and the current God of Jerusalem not being Yahweh, but the current God of Jerusalem being the Pharisees, the Talmud, and the Sanhedrin. So both of these are false philosophies, and these are two fighting city-states. And so Israel is just like in the time of the divided kingdom, with Judah in the south and Israel in the north. Israel is once again a divided kingdom, with Tel Aviv representing the America worshiping left wing or worship of America and the gods of the left, and you can even see their flags flying there. You'll see a lot of American flags. You'll see a lot of McDonald's flags, a lot of Coca-Cola flags, and then the Jerusalem representing or worshiping the God of the Talmud, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, etc. And they're fighting with each other, and as they fight with each other, neither of them are correct. And this, of course, means a house divided, and a house divided, as the famous saying goes, is easily conquered. Okay? If Israel established a Talmudic state instead of Torah-based state, they're in trouble. Correct. So that's my take on it. And so my chushat beten, my gut feeling says that that this war is going to end in disaster for Israel, and is going to end very possibly in the end of the current state of Israel. Is it going to happen immediately? I don't know. Maybe it's going to be 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road. I don't know. But this is one step closer in Israel, the current state of Israel as we know it, the current paradigm, which has existed in the land of Israel, I guess essentially since 48, you could say, but really even before 48, these issues were already playing themselves out. But let's say since 48. So that current paradigm is falling apart. And as are a lot of the current paradigms in the world, the world order that was set up after World War II, after the fall of the Soviet Union, is all falling apart. The whole world order is falling apart. And as a lot of commentators like to say, it's now, the struggle is now on for who is going to lead the next phase of, or the next world order, the next phase in history. And the Russians are vying for that position. The Chinese are vying for that position. The Americans are still vying for that position. Maybe the Arab world is vying for that position. The Muslims are vying for that position. I don't think Europe is. They're kind of lost their way a long time ago. But very possibly, maybe, just maybe, that next phase in world history is going to be led by Israel. Not Israel as a secular Western state as it is right now. Not Israel as a Talmudic / Pharisaic state, as the Ben Gvir and Kahanist types want it to be, but as a Tanachic / Karaite / Yahweh worshiping and serving state as it was meant to be when the Torah was given to the children of Israel thousands of years ago. So that ends my monologue. And with that, we will now go into this week's Torah study. So let me share the screen differently. And let's get down to Bidnid. I guess I'm a Bidnid man. Okay. All right. Let's close on the Order War. All right. Safaria, stay open. This can go bye-bye for a second. We need our Bible Hub. And by the way, if you're not using the site Bible Hub, it's a great site. It's really where I do most of my Tanakh studies, because it has Tanakh in many, many translations in many languages, many different versions in Hebrew. I mean, it's just great. So that's the one I use. That's the one you always see me using when I'm doing these studies, and I highly recommend use it too. It's Christian, obviously, it has the New Testament in there, but it doesn't matter because we don't need to refer to the New Testament part unless we want to, which I like to do sometime for various reasons. Okay, so no, I'm not a Christian, not in any way, shape, or form. I always have to say that whenever I mention the New Testament or Jesus or any of these people, I always have to, for obvious reasons, because this is one rogue Karaite going around kissing the patootie of the Christians. I always have to mention I am not a Christian. I'm not a Messianic. Never have been. Never will be. Never want to be. Have no interest whatsoever in the J-Man at all, aside from an historical figure who had some interesting things to say, some of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with, and for some, reason that only God knows, became famous in the world and galvanized a new religion which took over the West and other parts of the world. Okay, so that being said, let's see here, Torah, Bible Hub. I should open up Robert Alter since I'm sure we'll refer to him. Torah, Robert Alter. Let's go for Everett Fox. Everett Fox. All right, let me share the screen in the meantime. Any questions? He did miracles. Yeah, right. He certainly did. The miracle he did is that a tiny little preacher who had a tiny little following ended up becoming a major world religion. That is a miracle, I must say. Not in the way that the Christians think, but it is a miracle. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Window, Twitter. In fact, let me just name this window. Give me 1 second here. Name window, Twitter. And present, share screen, window, Torah, share. All right. So we got that. We also have this cultural where is it? Cultural background Torah. Maybe we can play around with that a little bit today. Let's get that going. Let's get that going. Let's get that going. There's our Bible Hub. So we are good to go. Okay. Michael Jackson or Elvis Presley of his time. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab some water. All right. I is back. Okay, so let's pick it up. I will, of course, go back a little bit as I usually do. So we're supposed to start today in Genesis 47. Let's see where we left off last time. So did we do 45? I remember we ended up right at 45:6 when Joseph revealed himself. So we'll pick it up there because it's just such a beautiful story. And remember, I said that Genesis 45:6 is really the climax of the entire book of Genesis. Everything leads up. Everything in the entire book of Genesis. Yeah, there are a lot of hills and valleys and other climaxes and stuff like that, but ultimately everything in the entire book of Genesis leads up to Genesis 45:6. Let's look at 45:6, where Joseph reveals himself. Oh, 45:5. 45:4. Here. 45:3. Here, this 45:3. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? Really, this is, if we could sum up all of Genesis in one sentence, in 3 words in English, 2 words in Hebrew, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph. This is the end point of Genesis. When Joseph reveals himself, and everything that has happened up to that point comes full circle. All of that buildup is released, all of that tension that's been building up for chapters and chapters and chapters throughout throughout the book of Genesis from creation up until this moment is all released. And we see that the end result, the if you want to call it the purpose or the end result of the book of Genesis is this statement, because what is it this statement responsible for? This statement is responsible for this statement is the key statement in how Israel ends up in Egypt. And the whole purpose, I won't say the whole purpose, but the final goal of the book of Genesis is to explain how the children of Israel ended up in Egypt. That's the final goal of the book of Genesis, and everything leads up to that. Okay. All righty. Well, happy birthday, Turiel. Happy 29th birthday for the 36th year in a row. So there we are, and that's where we left off. Let's switch over to the Hebrew. Feel free to follow along in your favorite translation, be it English, Spanish, Serbian. And so we'll pick it up here. I guess we'll just pick it up in one. So chapter 45, verse 1. Just make sure everything's working here. Looks good. So chapter 45, verse 1. Velo יכול יוסף להתאפק לכל הניצבים עליו ויקרא הוציאו כל איש מעלי ולא עמד איש איתו והתוודע יוסף אל אחיו. Yosef could not control himself anymore, could not hold back anymore, and he called out to all of those who were serving him, who were stationed, who were standing before him. Take out every person from before me. Okay, take everyone out of the room. And not a single person stood with him when Yosef revealed his identity to his brothers, made himself known, or made his identity known to his brothers. And the word in Hebrew is bahit wada. So the but means as or when, and the underlying verb here is hit wada, and that is what's called the hit pa'el, the reflexive form of the verb yada, which means to know. So reflexive means to make oneself known. That's what it means in this context. Okay. Verse 2. Wa'iten et kolo bebechi. Yosef raised his voice in crying, started crying out loud. In other words, Wa'yishma'u Mitzrayim Wa'yishma bet Paro. And all of Egypt heard, and all of the house of Pharaoh heard. It doesn't mean immediately, I don't think. It means they eventually found out about this. This is meant figuratively. Okay. Verse 3, Yomer Yosef el Echau, Ani Yosef. And Yosef said to his brothers as he was crying, right? So just imagine again from the brothers' point of view, they have no idea what the heck is going on. Okay, you remember the whole story. They went down there, and then money was put in their sacks, and then they were told not to come back again. And then Shimon was taken, and then Yehuda. The whole lead up to this, right? They have no idea what's going on. They just think this second in command of Egypt has gone completely crazy, and they have no idea what's going on. And then imagine the second in command of Egypt. They have no idea who he is, throws everyone out of the room and starts crying in front of them. They must have thought this guy is nuts. And so when he says, and can you imagine when they say, I am Joseph? Just imagine, right? And the Torah records the reaction absolutely perfectly, okay? As we shall see. I am Joseph. Od Avihai, is my father still alive? And his brothers couldn't answer him because they were flabbergasted before him. Just imagine, right? Imagine the story from their point of view. They could not even register what was happening. Okay. Verse 4. Vayomer Yosef el hao gishuna elai. Wayi gashu. Vayomer ani Yosef. Achichem asher machartem oti mitzrayma. And Yosef said to his brothers, come close to me. And they came close to him. Yomer ani Yosef. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, asher machartem oti mitzrayma, who you sold to Egypt. Could you imagine? Verse 5. We'ata al te'asvu wa'al yihar be'anechem ki machartem oti hena ki lemichya she'hani Elohim lifnechem. And now, do not be upset and do not get angry, or do not let this make you angry in your eyes, because you sold me here. Because God has sent me. They usually translate lemichya as a survival, as a revival. In other words, you sent. I'm going to paraphrase. God sent me here to keep all of us alive. Michya comes from the underlying root hai, which means life. It's the same root that the name Hava or Eve is based on, because she is Im Kol Chai. She was the mother of all the living. So Michya means as a keeping alive, or as a survival. Okay, so basically what Joseph is saying is, God sent me here ahead of you in order to keep us all alive. So don't be upset and don't be angry. Okay, God knew what he was doing. He used your actions to save all of us. Verse 6, Kizeh shenatayim ha'ra'av b'kerev ha'aretz v'od hamesh shanim asher en harish ve'katsir. Because for 2 years already, there has been a famine, b'kerev ha'aretz, in the midst of the land, meaning throughout the land, throughout the area, throughout the region. And there will be another 5 years in which there is no harish is plowing and katsir is harvesting or reaping. There'll be no plowing and no reaping. In other words, the agricultural cycle is going to be messed up during these 7 years. That's how bad the famine is. Okay, this also can harken back to the story of Noah very briefly. And if I could just find this for 1 second, so that would be Genesis 8, if I'm not mistaken. No, Genesis 6. Let's see here. Noah builds the ark. No, it's after he gets off the ark. Genesis 7. Genesis 8. And it's if I can't find it in a second, then I'll. Is it 9? Yeah, it's with the covenant of the rainbow. Let's see. One second here. One second. Where is it? One second. Almost there. If I can find it, if not, I'll just give up. Oh, darn. Why can't I find it? No, it's got to be here. 1 second. Oh, I know how I can find it. 1 second. I'll go back here. Harish. No. It wasn't Harish and Katsir. 1 second. Katsir was there, no? See, Genesis 8. There it is. Genesis 8:22. Okay. Okay. So this is when Noah gets out of the ark and he builds an altar. This is Genesis 8, chapter 8, verse 22. And basically, God promises he'll never bring a flood on the earth again. I'll just read verse 21. Okay. So God said in his heart, I will not ever again curse the land because of man. Because I know that the inclination of man's heart is evil from his early youth, from his youth. And I will not ever again destroy all living things as I have done. This is after Noah gets off the ark. Okay. And then he says, Od kol yemei haaretz. So as long as the earth exists, I'm paraphrasing there, okay, so these following things will not stop. Lo yishbatu will not stop, will not halt, will not cease. That's in the same word as Shabbat. Shabbat means to halt or cease or stop or rest. So lo yishbatu, these things, lo is no, will not, or no. Okay, so they will not stop. They will not cease from happening. 1 second here. And what are these things? Zera katsir, planting and reaping. Quote of home, heat and cold. I'm sorry, cold and heat. Kites for chorif, summer and winter. Yom v'layla, day and night. So the first two things we have here are planting, sowing seeds, and reaping. Okay. Well, if we go back to Genesis 45, we see that here it doesn't say zera v'katsir, but it says very similar to charish v'katsir. Instead of planting and reaping, instead of sowing seeds and reaping, it says charish, which is plowing. In other words, plowing to prepare the earth for seeds being planted with katsir and reaping. So this is almost deliberately hearkening back to Genesis 8:22, showing how it's true that it wasn't as bad as the flood, right? But in a certain sense, that's how bad the destruction was. It was so bad that it was kind of like a little taste of what it was during the flood, when the agricultural season or the agricultural cycle had completely stopped. And there goes the stupid beach ball. Okay, and it stopped. Thank you, beach ball, for stopping. Okay. All right. So let's go on. We're back in Genesis 45. I can close this out. Verse 7. וישלחני אלוהים לפניכם לשום לכם שארית בארץ ולחיות לכם לפליטה גדולה. And again, translating for word is a bit awkward here, a bit cumbersome. So I'll paraphrase. ישלחני אלוהים לפניכם לשום לכם שארית. God sent me before you to create for you a remnant, or to leave you as a remnant. In other words, to allow you to remain alive. Okay, as a remnant that stays alive. Ba'aretz, as a remnant in the land or on the earth. L'chayot lechem lefleita gdola, and to keep you alive. For lefleita means an escape, or an escape from danger. Let's see how they translate here. Deliverance. I don't like that translation, but okay, as a great deliverance. Okay, in other words, God sent me ahead to keep, in order that you guys can stay alive. Right? By me being second in command of Egypt and me having all the food in my hands, then I'm going to be able to bring the entire family down here and keep you all alive, or else maybe you would have died in the famine back up in the land of Canaan. Verse 8, lo atem shalachtem uti ki ha'elohim. And look now, it's not you who sent me here, but God. So Joseph is basically, he's excusing his brothers, or I wouldn't say excusing them, but he's making them feel better, right? Don't be upset, don't be mad, because this was all in God's plan. There was a reason for it. Yes, maybe I was a jerk when I was a kid, maybe I was a jerk to you guys, I was an arrogant little twit, I was the tag along little brother who ratted out everything you were doing back to dad, like the tattletale little brother. I saw whoever I saw, Jimmy, my older brother Jimmy. I saw him smoking a cigarette, in the park with his friends, right? Like he was that kind of brother, right? You just want to like smack him across the face, and but he's obviously learned his lesson. He's grown, and the brothers also learned their lesson. They also saw that there was a reason for all of this that happened. Okay, what yasimeni la'av leFaro, and God has made me like a father to Pharaoh, uladon lechol beito, and the master over all his household, moshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, or moshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, and the ruler, the commander over all of the land of Egypt. Okay, so basically Joseph is saying, yes, we all had it. We all had to. We all did what we did, and maybe it wasn't for the right reasons at the time, but God, there was a plan behind it all. We all had to go through what we went through. Okay, and I think this is an important lesson in life to understand that the mistakes that we make in life, even if they hurt other people, at the end of the day, there's a reason behind everything. There's a reason behind them. And when we do, in the end, repent for our sins, when we do in the end feel sorry, I hate the word repent, but when do in the end genuinely feel sorry for what we've done to other people, or when other people in the end genuinely feel sorry for what they've done to us, perhaps, or then we realize that it was all for a reason anyway. There was a reason behind it, and I think that's the idea that Joseph is expressing exactly. Okay, I didn't do what I did for the right reasons. You guys didn't do what you did for the right reasons, but we all had to go through what we had to go through. This was meant to be a pain, an experience of pain and suffering, which ultimately leads to maturity and growth. And once we've achieved that maturity and growth and seen and felt sorry for what we did in the past, then we realized that there was a reason behind it, that God was behind the whole thing anyway. Okay, verse 9. Maharu alu el avi wa amartem elau ko amar bintcha Yosef. Okay, so let's start with there. So hurry up, go back up to my father and say to him, Ko amar bintcha Yosef, so says your son Yosef. Samani Elohim la'adon lachol Mitzrayim. God has made me a ruler, a master over all of Egypt. Rida elai, al ta'amod, come down to me. Don't stand still, or don't tarry. Don't delay. Post haste. Verse 10. And you will dwell. This is him speaking to his father. You will live in the land of Goshen, and you'll be close to me. You and your sons and your sons' sons, and your flocks and your herds and everything that you have. So relocation time. Verse 11. And by the way, how long was Jacob in the land of Egypt? I'm sorry, in the land of Canaan. Remember, well, we'd have to figure it all out. But remember, he was born in the land of Canaan, and then he had to run away for 20 years and live with Lavan. He ended up living with Lavan, and then he came back, gave birth to Benjamin. Joseph was sold when he was 17, so that means that, and now Joseph is around 40, and now Yaakov is coming down. So Yaakov was there might be numbers that would get it more exact, but it means Yaakov, after he came back from Lavan, lived in the land of Egypt, in the land of Canaan, in the land of Israel for about 23, give or take, maybe 25 to 30 years. And now he's coming down to, so of his life, okay, we know he lived in, well, let's do it this way. Okay, we know he lived in. We know he lived in with Lavan for 20 years total. And as we'll see later on in Genesis, he spent the last 17 years of his life in Egypt. So that means he lived 37 years of his life outside of the land of Israel. And the rest he lived in the land of Israel. And Jacob lived to the age of, was it 37? 137? Let's see here for 1 second, just out of curiosity. I'm a numbers guy, so I love running these numbers, but this is not exact because we'd have to sit and figure it all out. So it's the end of Genesis 49. Let's see here. Okay. One second. Okay. No, it doesn't mention his age there. Jacob's burial. Love. Oh boy, where is it? I'm not going to look around for it right now. Let's do it this way. Jacob, Wikipedia. So, does it say his age? 147. There we go. Okay, so he lived 37 years outside the land of Israel, which means he lived 110 years inside the land of Israel. Okay. Okay, where were we? Oh, boy. No, not there at all. Going back to Genesis 45. Okay, verse 11, 45:11. וכלכלתי אותך שם עוד 5 שנים רעב. And I will take care of you. I will support you there because the famine is going to last another 5 years. פן תיוורש אתה וביתך בכל אשר לך. Lest you and your entire household become poverty, become destroyed or poverty stricken or. Okay, verse 12. Wahine עיניכם רואות ועיני אחי בנימין כפי המדבר אליכם. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Binyamin. Talk about that in a second. Kiphi hamidaber elechem. That is my mouth. It is out of my mouth that these words are coming. Okay. So why does he say your eyes see it and my brother Benjamin's eyes? Well, maybe. Well, we see Benjamin has always been treated separately and differently by Joseph from the very beginning of this entire story. But in addition to that, maybe if Jacob isn't going to believe the other brothers, he's certainly going to believe Benjamin, right? Because they have the same mother. Okay. So Benjamin, the little one, the little baby, the other son of Rachel says, I saw my brother Joseph, then Jacob is going to believe it. Verse 13. והגדתם לאבי את כל כבודי במצרים ואת כל אשר ראיתם ומיהרתם והורדתם את אבי הנה. And you shall tell my father about all of my honor, all of my high position in Egypt, but כל אשר ראיתם, and everything you've seen, מיהרתם והורדתם את אבי הנה, and hurry up and bring my father down to here. Verse 14. ויפול על סווארי בנימין אחיו אויב, and he fell upon the neck of his brother Benjamin. This phrase, falling upon the neck and crying, is used a number of times. We see this also when Joseph and Yaakov meet. Okay, but he fell upon the neck of his brother Benjamin, crying, and he cried. Wayev. Binyamin bacha warau, and Benjamin cried on his neck. In other words, they kind of like embraced and started crying. Right? It's a beautiful scene. The two brothers who hadn't seen each other for for almost 25 years. Brother from not from another mother, from the same mother. Okay, verse 15. "Wayanashek lechol echau wayef alehem." And he kissed all of his brothers, and he cried with them, or cried over them. "Va'acharei chen dibru echau ito." And afterwards his brothers spoke with him. They conversed. Okay. Verse 16. "Wa'akol nishma beit paro lemor." And his voice, or the voice, was heard in the house of Pharaoh. Okay, so in other words, it doesn't mean literally they heard Joseph crying. It means Pharaoh found out, right? Word got around, and Pharaoh's household found out about what was going on. And this, of course, harkens back to when Joseph first reveals himself, right? Wishma Mitzrayim, Wishma Beit Pharaoh. In verse 2, Egypt heard and the house of Pharaoh heard. In other words, all of Egypt found out about this, about what was going on with Joseph. With Tzafna Paneach. Okay. Lemor. So then Pharaoh's household said, or Pharaoh said, Ba'u achei Yosef. The brothers of Yosef have come. Wa'itav be'enei Pharaoh, wa'enei Vadao. And this was good. This seemed good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants. So this Pharaoh loved Joseph, right? He relied on Joseph. He put him second in command. Wherever Joseph went in Egypt, he was always second in command. He was second in command to Potiphar. He was second in command to Sara Tabachim, to the jailer, the head of the jail when he was put in jail, and now he's second in command to Egypt. I mean, this guy was he was a real Jew. He always ends up being like, maybe not Joseph Biden, but like the Anthony Blinken, right? God forbid. That's day and night between those two. But the Jews always end up like, they're never in the foreign nations. They're not at the top of the court, but they always have very high positions in the court, and we see this already here. Okay, verse 18. Okay, verse 17. I'm sorry. Vayomer Paro el Yosef emor el achecha zot asu. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say this to your brothers, or tell your brothers, this is what you should do. Okay, load up your bi'irchem. Okay, so this is an animal word. We'll go to our animal list in a second. Your animals, and come and come on to the land of, come on down to the land of Egypt, to the land of I'm sorry, lehu bo artza Canaan. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. This is what you should say to your brothers. The brothers are down in Egypt. Okay, go load up your animals and go back to the land of Canaan. Okay. All right. Let's just make sure I have this word bi'irchem. I'm pretty sure I do. Just give me 1 second here. One sec. 4 sheets. Okay. Just want to make sure I have this in my list of animal terms. Any questions, any comments in the meantime? Let me read some here. Check Yoshi, seconds up. Speaking of the flood, do you have a recorded teaching on that topic? If not, you should do one devoted just to that one day. I would like to hear your points on that. You can look back in, maybe I should mention this each week, but all of these talks are recorded and they live permanently on YouTube. So if you go to the Karaite Insights channel in YouTube and look back, in previous weeks, you'll eventually get back to Parshat Noach, and there we speak about the flood. And I think I actually have it not just this year, but last year and maybe even the year before. So that would be the best way to find out more about what we said about that. Okay, so we are looking for animal terms. Where did my animal terms go? There we go. So let's just make sure we have this here. Is keves kesef shigar I guess we don't. Oh, here it is. Be'ir. Genesis 45:17. So it's this very verse. Be'irchem, cattle or beasts. Okay. So we have it in our list. So load up your beasts. No, we're not talking about the Ford F-150. Right? I think at least 2 friends who call their trucks the beast. So no, we're not talking about that. But your actual beasts. Verse 18, Chu et avichem wa et batechem uvo elai, and bring back your father and your households, and in other words, all of the people of your household. Uvo elai, and come to me. Wa etna lechem et tuv eretz Mitzrayim, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt. Va ichlu et helev haaretz, and you will eat the fat of the land. Okay. So the fat of the land, right? So here is the expression, the fat of the land. Okay, I remember in high school reading the book Of Mice and Men, one of my favorite books. John Steinbeck, right, was the author. And I remember, was it George? And who was the other one? There was one retarded guy that was George, and then was Lenny, right? No, Lenny was the retarded one. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not supposed to say retarded. The mentally challenged one. Yeah, Lenny, exactly. And I remember that George would say to Lenny, "We're gonna find a place, and we're gonna live off the fat of the land." Right? That was an expression again and again in that book, if I remember correctly. That was a great book. There are a couple of books. Most of the books I had to read in high school, I couldn't stand them. Shakespeare. I'm sorry, there wasn't a single Shakespeare. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Midsummer Night's Dream, I think I kind of liked, but it was very boring, honestly. Even though everyone says Shakespeare is boring, but not boring, but I really found Shakespeare kind of boring. But there are a couple of books that I distinctly remember having to read in high school, which I thought were like, they just made a lifetime impression on me. I remember one book that the entire class hated. Okay, the teacher, her name was Mrs. Spilka. She made us read David Copperfield. And it was by what's his face, Charles Dickens, and we had to read some other Charles Dickens books as well, and they were kind of okay, but David Copperfield was so damn boring. Maybe I would appreciate it now, I don't know, but it was so damn boring that basically like halfway through the entire class just stopped reading it. She would say, "Okay, for tonight, class, your homework is read, I don't know, pages 125 to 153 of David Copperfield," and we'd come in the next day. And she'd start asking questions, and it was clear that nobody had read the book because it was so damn boring, right? And this was the honors classes, so this wasn't like we were not the type to not read books, okay? So, and eventually she realized that the entire class is basically like quietly revolting against reading this book, and she's like, "All right, I can see you guys are not into this. We'll just drop it and go on to another book." So that's one book I remember that I couldn't stand. I never had to read Great Expectations, believe it or not. But a couple books I remember that we had to read, which really, really made a lasting impression on me. And one of them was Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And it was also short. It was to the point. It was a good book. And another one I remember was called Flowers for Algernon. I don't know if you ever had to read that one, but that was another book that I remember to this day made an impression on me. And that also they were both included. We don't call them retards anymore. We're allowed to call them retards? No, I guess not. We call them, mentally challenged people. So Flowers for Algernon, who, by the way, the writer of Flowers for Algernon was Jewish. No surprise, I guess. So those are two books that I remember. I'm sure there are other ones, but those two books always stick out in my mind as books that really, really I enjoyed reading in high school, as opposed to many of the books we had to read. I remember one of our teachers made us read what was it called? Pride and Prejudice. Oh my God. The girls loved that book. And the guys, we couldn't we couldn't stand it. I mean, it was like, God, please, when is this torture going to be over? I don't want to hear any more about, whatever it was, high English society in the 1600s or something. I couldn't take it. Anywho, yeah, the guy transformed exactly, and then back to a retard in the end. I'm sorry, it was a brilliant book. The short story, because he ended up doing a longer form. What's his name again? The author. He ended up doing a longer form, which I listened to actually recently, and I didn't really like it. He did a whole novel based on the short story. Daniel Keyes. So here, Flowers for Algernon is a short story by American author Daniel Keyes, later expanded by him into a novel and subsequently adopted for film and other media. So yeah, we had to read in high school. We had to read the short story. It was great. The novel is a little bit, I don't know, it just goes into too great detail. But if you haven't read the short story Flowers for Algernon, it's a real quick read. I think it's maybe 70 or 80 pages, and it'll just grip you. Yeah, it really will. Okay, so anywho, how do we even get into that? Oh, right. I was talking about books. Oh, we're talking about Chelev Haaretz. Okay, you will eat the fat of the land. So that expression, the fat of the land, comes from here, probably. I don't know 100% for sure. And there are many phrases that we have in modern day English which come from the Tanakh, and many also from the New Testament, as a matter of fact, that many people don't even realize that they come from the Tanakh. I should make a list sometime. I'm sure there are lists out there, but if we come across others, then I'll certainly point them out. Okay, so that's the fat of the land. Okay. Verse 19, Wa'ata suveta zot asu. And now you've been commanded, you've gotten your command. Zot asu, do this you shall do. Chulechem me'eretz Mitzrayim. Galot letapchem u lenishechem u nasatem et avichem ubatem. So this is what this is what I want you to do. Pharaoh says to Joseph, okay? Take wagonfuls from the land of Egypt for wagonfuls of provisions, letapchem for your little ones, lenishechem for your women, u nishartem et nisatem et avichem uvatem, and pick up your father, carry your father, and bring him here. Okay, transport your father here. Literally, lift up your father and come. Okay. In other words, go back. Okay. Take a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to give you. Okay. For free, obviously, is the implication, because again, Pharaoh loves, or at least trusts, Joseph, right? And go back with all this stuff. Don't waste time. Okay. Tell your whole family to pack up all this shit, okay, and get your asses back down here to Egypt real quick, because I'm going to put you in a very good section of Egypt called Goshen, which is where the Israelites are going to remain until they escape hundreds of years later. I wouldn't say escape, because that implies kind of, they walked out in front of everybody. So until they exited, until they had their exodus, so grab your stuff, come on down, and I'm going to put you in a great part of the land, and I'm going to take care of all your needs during the famine. Okay, verse 20. And so literally it means, so let your eyes not have mercy on your vessels, is literally what it says. But what is he saying? It's like, don't worry about your possessions. Okay, don't think too hard about what you're leaving behind. Okay, literally it says, your eyes, al tachos, do not have a mercy, or pay attention to, or have a soft spot al klechem, on your possessions, on your vessels, literally. Your goods, they translate it here. Tachos. Let me just look at this for 1 second. It's my own edification. Here to pity, to look upon with compassion, right? Okay. Because Kituv kol Eretz Mitzrayim lachem, because the best of all the land of Egypt will be given to you, will be for you. Verse 21. We are. This Karite seems are similar to Neturei Karta in Israel. Absolutely not. Absolutely, Chica, absolutely not. In no way, shape, or form. The Neturei. Okay, the Neturei Karta, they are, well, they're best known for being rabidly anti-Zionist. So much so that they did do all kinds of crazy things. They hold up, I think they've held up the Palestinian flags. They've supported the Palestinians. They're sick. They are sick people. I don't even want to say what I would do to them if I ever came to power in Israel. Not that I necessarily ever will, but these are sick people. No, I am just the opposite. I am a radical Zionist who believes so much in Zionism that he would like to see an eventual end to the current secular Western-oriented state of Israel, and its replacement with a true Tanach-only / Karaite state. Okay, maybe in that sense, there's some overlap in the sense that the Neturei Karta, they also believe the current state of Israel, as do many Haredim, as do many ultra-Orthodox. They think that the current state of Israel is an abomination. I wouldn't go so far as to say that, not by a long shot. Yes, it's problematic. It has to go through its growing pains. It's eventually like an animal that sheds its skin. It's gonna eventually have to shed its current skin and metamorphose into something new and something better, right? But I am not an anti-Zionist in the least. I mean, quite the opposite. I would like the state of Israel before the Mashiach comes. Maybe it will require the coming of the Mashiach, but I would like the state of Israel to be, to take over as much land as possible from the Euphrates to the river of Egypt. And no, I'm a huge Zionist, but I don't think that the state in its current formation, in its current form, I know that the state in its current form cannot do such a thing. And so I guess ironically there is some overlap, but we're coming from totally different sides. I mean, the Neturei Karta, they are enemies of the current state of Israel. And yes, I am very dissatisfied. I mean, the current state of Israel and the state of Israel in its current form, in a certain sense, is an abomination, because it, instead of following the Torah and the Tanakh, it's following Western culture. It's following Western norms. Its real God is the United States of America and the West. But I am in no way, shape, or form an anti-Zionist. Quite the opposite. If anything, the way I would see it is much closer to the Dati Leumi point of view. I don't know how many people are familiar with the various, sects in current modern Israel, but I went for a number of years to a Dati Leumi, that means religious Zionist yeshiva, and their concept was that the current state of Israel is Reshit Smichat Geulateno, which means the beginning of the flourishing of our redemption. In other words, they see the state of Israel in its current form as a stepping stone towards the current state of Israel, but they are extremely, pro-Zionist, pro-state of Israel as much as possible, and pro-IDF, etc. So I'm more in line with them. I don't worship the current state as much as they do, although since really the abandonment of Gush Katif in 2005. Even a lot of those Dati Leumi types have turned more into, they have stopped worshiping the state so much. But I definitely see the current state of Israel as a stepping stone that we have to pass through in order to get to the true state of Israel, which is not a Talmudic / Pharisaic state, but which is a biblical / Tanakhic / Karaite state. But can I say I wish the current state of Israel well? What I can honestly say is that I wish that the current state of Israel would transform into the true state of Israel, meaning a Tanakhic / Karaite / biblical state, whatever you want to call it. I wish it would do so without such horrible growing pains, but because of the stubbornness of the people of Israel, it looks like, sadly, and this was proven in October 7th, that the transition is going to have to be done the hard way rather than the easy way. It looks like, sadly, there's going to have to be a lot of destruction. We Jews are going to have to get smacked around a lot in order to wake up and realize that the current state of Israel is not going to serve as the vessel for the true redemption of the people of Israel. It's like anything else. When a parent says to a son or a daughter, usually a son, you can do this two ways. You can do this the easy way, or you can do this the hard way. But one way or another, it's going to get done. So, sadly, the current state of Israel, it seems, has through their own stubbornness, we know that the people of Israel are a stiff-necked nation, and so it means Karaites support Hamas now. Are you crazy? What, Chico? Have you been listening to any word that I say? I don't know if you're trolling or what. Support Hamas? Are you joking me? If you only knew, and I've said it in previous Torah studies, and I won't repeat it because I don't want to get thrown off YouTube or whatever. If you only knew what I would do to the citizens of Gaza if I were ever in control of Israel, believe me, you would not say that I support Hamas. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, then I'm sorry. I can't help you. I think everyone else does. Okay, let's move on. Maybe there's a language barrier. I mean, maybe you don't speak fluent English or something. I don't know. Your name is Chico. Maybe your Spanish is your first language. I don't mean to insult you, but what are you not understanding? Okay, I'm about as right-wing, anti-Hamas, anti-Gaza as any human being on planet Earth could possibly be. Okay, that's it. Okay, verse 21. ויעשו כן בני ישראל וייתן להם יוסף עגלות על פי פרעה וייתן להם צידה לדרך. So the children of Israel did as they were commanded, and Joseph provided them with carts according to the instructions of Paro, and he gave them provisions for their journey. Okay, verse 22. לכולם נתן לאיש חליפות שמלות ולבנימין נתן 300 כסף ו5 חליפות שמלות. So to each of them he gave, to each of the brothers he gave נתן לאיש חליפות שמלות. He gave them changes of clothing. Okay, so in other words, listen, they have a journey. They got to go all the way back to Canaan with their donkeys, and then they've got to pack up all their shit, and they've got to come all the way back down to Egypt, right? So they're going to need some changes of clothing, right? So, but the point here is that to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver, and he gave 5 changes of clothing. Okay, so he singled out Benjamin for special treatment. This is what he's been doing from the beginning. Remember when they were all eating together, he gave Benjamin, what was it, 5 portions instead of 1? What do you want? Thank you. Oh, I don't like dark chocolate, but thank you. It's a nice thought. Okay. All right. Verse 23. How many portions was it again? Now I gotta look it up. So I have it in my head. 1 second. So it's gonna be around Genesis 42. So to Egypt. Let's go to the English so I can just scan it very quickly. Grain, 1 second, please. So journey to Egypt. Must be 1 second of fright, and then went to the place. Just give him water, wash the feet, and just give them the gifts. Here, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone's else. Okay, so basically, all the other brothers, they had like European portions, and Benjamin had an American portion. I'm very into cooking, and so I watch a lot of like cooking shows and stuff like that, and it amazes me like one type of cooking show I'll see sometimes is when someone will visit a restaurant and they'll show the food that's at the restaurant, and whenever that restaurant is an American restaurant, it absolutely blows me away the size of the portions. I mean, it's unbelievable. They will serve one person portions that are fit. Oh, I've got to plug in a second. They will serve one person a portion that's fit for like an entire family, like a double stuffed pizza with like extra stuff with extra cheese and pepperoni and like 10 layers on top of it, like vodka penne on top of it, and then more cheese, and they'll serve it to like 2 people or something like that. It's just unbelievable. Thank you. Good morning and Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, Matilda Gaza. Okay. Alrighty. So I got to plug in. Let me go through 1 or 2 more verses, and then we'll take a quick break and plug in. Verse 23, Ula'aviu shalach kizot asara hamorim, and for his father he sent 10 donkeys, nos'im mitub mitzrayim, laden with the best products, with the choice products of Egypt. Egypt wa eser atonot. Aton is a female donkey, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I think it's in our. I'm quite sure that aton is in our list of animal terms. Aton. Let me just verify. I'm almost positive it is. Amor aton. So there we go. Female. It's a female donkey. Sometimes translated as she ass. Right. So 10 donkeys laden with the best products of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys, male donkeys and female donkeys, nosot bar walechem, carrying grain and bread, umazon aviu lederech, and provisions, food for his father on the way. So in other words, basically, Joseph basically hooked them up, right, for their journey. Enough for them to get back, for them to pack up and get back down with enough food to eat, throughout the entire process, the entire ordeal. Verse 24, why yishalach et achiu, achau, wa yelchu, wa yomer alehem al tirgizu badarech. And he sent his brothers, and they went, and he said to them, don't fool around on the way. Tirgizu means like zigzag almost. Quarrel. Let me check that one out. Yeah, I don't know. Quarrel, I think, is wrong. Right? It's often used as like the mountains will shake. So quiver, quake. So I think it means like zigzag, honestly. I don't think it means quarrel. Let's get a Robert Alter on that one. Let's see how he does. So that's 45-24. Now we'll do an Everett Fox. 45-24. So do not be agitated on the journey. I don't like that translation. Let's get a Robert altar on that one, and I really have to plug in. I really have to plug in. No, I better plug in first because we're going to go bye-bye if I don't. Okay, let me plug in. Let me plug in, and we'll be right back. I'm just going to put it on mute. I'll be back in like a minute or two. So yeah, now we have sound. Okay, so Chico says, yeah, Joseph tested his brothers, and from that moment we knew a knowledge. It's arvut, unity. First of all, the word for unity in Hebrew, I think you mean not arvut, achdut. Oh, maybe you do mean arvut, like Kol Yisrael Arivim Zelezeh. Okay, fair enough. So Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Messianic gather. And another thing I see here, and this is not meant as an insult, but I see that English is not your first language. So then maybe that's the reason that you weren't understanding exactly what I was saying regarding my position on the state of Israel and Hamas. So Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Messianic gather and together to face the Hamas. No sinat chinam. I'm sorry, I cannot agree with you on that one. Sadly, I certainly cannot include Messianic in that bunch. Okay, Messianic Judaism is idol worship. Okay, there are some Messianics who just say that the J-man was no more than the Messiah and he was not the Son of God, but way too many believe he was the Son. And even then, I would disagree with them, but okay, it doesn't cross a red line if they don't think he was actually God or Son of God. But too many Messianics do believe that. And sad to say, Chico, Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Messianic, I certainly can't include Messianic in that list. Because to me, again, Christianity is idol worship. Messianic Judaism is, for the most part, idol worship. And sadly, the Orthodox and Conservative and Reform, they will get along better during the war because they need to. So that which is necessary will be done, and we see that in Israel, that the Conservative, Orthodox, and honestly, the Messianics are not even much of a factor in Israel. Anointed to do what? I don't know what you're talking about. At any rate, there's definitely more unity now, but there are differences, and these differences are important, right? There is going to have to be some clarification. We can't just say that everyone with all their different points of view, all get along forever. People have different points of view for a reason, okay? Hamas and Israel have different points of view. Does that mean they should get along? Of course not, right? Different points of view are there for a reason, and at some point there has to be a clarification what's right, what the right point of view, and what the wrong point of view is. So yes, the Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform certainly have a lot more in common than they do with the Messianic. So I certainly wouldn't include the Messianic in that list, not in the least. Again, the Messianic are not much of a factor in Israel anyway. But the Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform, they are kind of sticking together. They're trying to bring out the unity more than the differences at this point. But at some point, those differences will come to the surface again if the state of Israel survives, and there will have to be some clarification which the right way is. And I have my own thoughts on that, which I've mentioned many times. Okay. Okay, for those who claim Jesus was an anointed one, like I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Oh, that's okay. It is time to you Israel for one unity. No, anyway, I'm Messianic from Indonesia. Okay, that's great. So you're Messianic from Indonesia. That's wonderful. Congratulations. I cannot include. I'm sorry. I cannot include idol worshippers among those that I consider to be my brothers and sisters. So Messianic Jews, I have a big problem with them, but thankfully they're not much of a factor in Israeli society anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's great. You're entitled to believe what you want to believe. People believe all kinds of cuckoo things in this world. I can't tell you not to believe that Jesus is God or Son of God or Messiah, whatever you happen to believe. But I'm sorry, I cannot just say that I'm going to set aside my differences between what I believe and what you believe just because there's a war. I can't. I'm not going to say that I'm going to accept your idol worship just because there's a war going on. Never have, won't now, and never will. Sorry, Chico. Okay, let's close out some of these sheets here. If you want someone to go, there is a Karaite who likes to go around and kiss the butts of Messianics, and go hang out with him, and he'll tell you things like, he'll tell you all about your J guy, and then, some of his followers can say, "Oh, thank you, you've increased my faith in Yeshua." You imagine if someone ever comes to me and tells me you've increased my faith in Yeshua, then I have failed, completely failed as a Karaite. I will commit Harry at that point. Okay, I don't ever want anyone to come to me and say you have increased my faith in Yeshua. If anyone ever says that to me, I retire as a Karaite. I'm done. Okay, just as I wouldn't want someone to come to me and say you've increased my faith in Molech, you've increased my faith in Dagon, you've increased my faith in Baal Zevuv or any other false god. Okay, so you believe whatever you want to believe. I cannot share your belief system. Okay, I appreciate your support for Israel, but I cannot in any way, shape, or form share in your belief system. Okay, all right, let's move on. So I would say, don't, I'm a colloquial kind of guy. So, don't F around on the way. Like, just go right up there, pack up your crap, and get right back down to Egypt, okay? Because there's no time to waste, all right? I give you enough food to do it the right way. Go up there, get dad, get the family, and come on back down to Egypt. All right. Verse 25, the revival of Jacob. So now Jacob finds out that his son is alive, right? Remember, Jacob hasn't seen his son for, again, approximately 25 years. We did the math on this, I think, last week and the week before. Give or take 25 years. Joseph was 17. He's now approximately 40. So, maybe a little bit more. So around 25 years, Jacob has thought that the firstborn of his beloved wife, his only true wife, the only wife he ever wanted, was dead, and now he finds out he's alive. Okay, and they went up from Egypt, and they came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. Verse 26, lo lemor, and they spoke to him, saying, "Oh, Yosef Chai, Yosef is still alive. Joseph is still alive." Okay, Od Yosef Chai. This is, I think, the name of the yeshiva near the grave of Joseph in Shechem, if I'm not mistaken. So, any rate, neither here nor there. Joseph is still alive, and not only that, but he's the ruler over all of Egypt. So yafag, so pag means like to stop, like his heart stopped. It doesn't mean he had a heart attack, literally. Okay, it means like his heart skipped a beat, right? Maybe he had heart palpitations, but I think it means it figuratively. Okay, maybe quite literally, maybe physically. Okay, basically his heart skipped a beat. I'll translate this one as. Here's, let's see how Robert Alter translates that one as 45:25. And his heart stopped, for he did not believe him. Okay, that is literally what it means. But I don't think it literally means he had a heart attack. And I'm guessing that Robert Alter kind of, okay, translations like his heart fainted, King James Version, his heart was numb, he was stunned, etc. Blunt the force of the original. The Hebrew verb plainly means to stop, or more precisely, to intermit. So yeah, there we go. His heart skipped a beat, right? Judah had warned that the loss of Benjamin would kill the old man. Now the tremendous shock of the news about Yosef, which at first he cannot believe, does he imagine his less than trustworthy sons are perpetrating a cruel hoax, includes a physical sin hope. Okay, there goes Robert Alter again using a word. I have no idea what it means. Where were you when I was studying for my SATs? Robert Alter, syncope. I think it means sin cope with. I think it means like a physical. Oh, okay, passing out. Okay, so basically, in a nutshell, in all his fancy language, basically what he's saying is yes, that Jacob's heart literally skipped a beat, and I think that's about right. Okay, intermit. Okay. Because he didn't believe them, right? I mean, how is he gonna? How could he believe such a thing? He thinks his son is dead. He hasn't seen his son for 25 years. He couldn't be comforted when his son died, right? For a long time, they tried to comfort him, and he wouldn't be comforted. We read that earlier, and now all of a sudden, they come up to him and they say Joseph is alive and he's ruler over Egypt. Honestly, if the sons were a little bit more savvy, they would have just said Joseph is alive. That would have, I think, been a better way to tell Jacob, because it's hard to believe, but it's least within the realm of possibility, right? But to say Joseph is alive and he's the ruler of Egypt, that makes it so fantastical. Is that a word? I think it is. That makes it so out of the ordinary, so hard to believe that it actually made that statement, true as it was, may have been what caused Jacob's heart to skip a beat or to momentarily stop. Okay, that he wasn't sure, was he being played with, was he being tricked, as Robert Alter, I think, kind of correctly implies. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. All right, we dabru elau et kol divrei Yosef, and they repeated to him, they spoke to him all of the words of Joseph, asher diber alehem, which he had said to them, yar et agalot asher shalach Yosef, and he saw, this is Jacob, saw the carts, the carts laden with all the provisions that Joseph had sent. So it's not just he's hearing their words, he sees actual proof. Like, why would they have these carts otherwise, right? It was obviously more food than they had been sent to buy, or there were things in those carts or they were not even his carts, or they were not even their carts. Maybe they were Egyptian carts with Egyptian donkeys and he asses and she asses, male and female donkeys. But anyway, he had visual proof that something, to back up what the brothers were saying. He saw he saw the carts that Joseph had sent to carry him, to take him down to Egypt. Okay, so it doesn't matter. Same thing I said before. Ruach Yaakov, and Yaakov's spirit came alive. Yaakov's spirit was revived. Okay, Yaakov came back to life. Okay, or the spirit of Yaakov, their father, was revived. Okay. Wayomer Yisrael Rav Od Yosef b'ni Hai Ilcha Wa'erenu B'terem Amut. And Israel said, and this is a kind of a tough word to translate in this context, but we'll give it our best shot, and we can look at some of the translation. Israel said, "This is too much for me. That it's too much for me that Joseph is still that Od Yosef b'ni Hai, that my son Joseph is still alive. Let me go and see him. I will go and see him before I die." Okay, let's get a Robert Alter on that one. So that's 28, 45, 28. There's even a comment on it. Okay, I guess we can read this comment, even though it's not exactly relating to this. So let me hold on one second here. Let's copy this. Oops. Oh, darn. There we go. V. And we have to go to page 493. So let's try it. Oh, darn, what happened here? Okay, wait a second. Let's do it this way. Bookmarks, Torah, Robert Alter. This is page 493. So we'll go to page, 490. $490. Second here. Oh, too far. 490. There we go. Let's stop in this program. All the words I use. Say enough. Okay, so that's how he translates it. Enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay. So right. So we were reading this comment here. So Joseph, my son, is still alive. The wonderful poignancy of these words should not deflect us from noting that Jacob is again invoking a kind of self-defining motif, whatever the heck that means, ever since Joseph's disappearance 22 years earlier. Okay, so 22 years earlier. We have an amount there. I don't know where he's getting the 22 exactly, but at any rate, he's been talking about going down to the grave. By now, he has, in fact, attained advanced old age. And so the idea that he has little time left is quite reasonable. The brief seizure he has just undergone is, of course, evidence of his physical frailty. Jacob's story, like David's, is virtually unique in ancient literature in its searching representation of the radical transformations a person undergoes in the slow course of time. True. The powerful young man who made his way across the Jordan to Mesopotamia with only his walking staff, who wrestled with stones and men and divine beings, is now an old man tottering on the brink of the grave, bearing the deep wounds of his long life. Okay? Typical kind of Robert Alter comment. He likes to wax poetic a lot. Okay, so radio. Okay. So we can close this off. Okay, so that brings us to the end of Genesis chapter 45. Hello? Oh no, it's frozen up again. Oh darn. Here we go, the beach ball. Oh, it stopped. Behave, Chrome. Behave. Oh, don't beach ball. There it goes with the beach ball. Now the beach ball stopped. Well, we're used to it already. Once every session, and I realize now I never get the beach ball other than when this streaming platform is running. So nothing I can do. I'm getting the beach ball, so we're just gonna have to sit here. It usually lasts 3 to 5 minutes, and there's not much I can do. Let's see, what can I do? Maybe I can read something from my phone because I think. Oh, wait, is it stopping? Is it behaving itself? Oh. Let's see here. All right, so let me see. There was something I wanted to read. I could do it on my phone. Okay. Okay, so Psalm 23. Let's go to that. So we saw that Wahi Ruach Yaakov Aviu, right? The, the, the spirit of Jacob, their father, Avihim, came alive. Okay, so if we look at Psalm 23, let me find it here. First King, Psalm 23. No, that's not the one I'm looking for. No, that's not the one. For why Psalm 23. One second. One second here. I can't find it. All right. Well, let's just read. Then, why don't we do this while we're waiting for it? We'll just read a random psalm while I'm waiting for the beach ball to stop. Because again, if I'm not mistaken, even though it's frozen at the moment, you guys can still see me and hear me. I don't know how that works, but let's choose. I don't know. We'll take Psalm 24. Tanach Hebrew. Psalm 24. Okay. So Psalm 24 says, "Le David Mizmor," so a song of David or a tune of David, Le Yahweh, Haaretz Umiloah, Tevel Wa Yoshve Ba, the earth, the entire earth, and all that fills it is Yahweh's, belongs to Yahweh. Tevel v'yoshve ba, Tevel in modern Hebrew means the universe, but here it means, I guess, the whole earth, the world. They translate it here, v'yoshve ba, and all of those who inhabit it. So everything belongs to Yahweh. Verse 2, Kihu al yamim isada, wa al neharot yichoneneha, because he established it upon the seas, and he set it up upon the rivers. So let me just see something here. So he set the earth up on the seas and established it on the rivers. A lot to say about that, but I'm just going to move on. Verse 3, Mi ya'aleh bahar Yahweh, who will go up, who will ascend to the mountain of Yahweh? What is the mountain of Yahweh? This is the Psalm of David, okay? The mountain of Yahweh was already known, okay? It was by the end of David's life, and that is, of course, Jerusalem. Umi yakum bimkom kadsho, and who will rise up to the place of his holiness. Okay, we know that Yahweh, the glory, the kavod of Yahweh dwells. We're going to get into Exodus, and Exodus, the book of Exodus, can really be divided into two parts. The first part is the actual story of the Exodus, and the second part is the building of the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle. Okay, and we'll see in this, when the Mishkan is built, when the tabernacle is built, that God lives, as I mentioned many times in many other studies. God, quote unquote, lives. His essence, his energy emanates on this earth from between the cherubim that are on the ark cover of the Ark of the Covenant. Same thing that Indiana Jones was looking for. Okay. So who will go up to the mountain of Yahweh? Who will arise to the place of his holiness? Naki kapayim ubar levav, one who has clean hands. What does it mean, clean hands? Okay, clean hands means hands that are not blood stained. Is essentially what it means. Okay, someone who has not used their hands to do bad things. Maybe it doesn't necessarily mean only murder, although I think it really is referring mostly to that or primarily to that. Maybe anyone who has not used their hands, who has stained their hands by doing bad things with their hands. Okay. So naki kapayim, so naki kapayim, he who has clean hands, clean of hands, ubar levav, and an innocent heart, a pure heart. Asher lo nasa l'shao nafshi, who did not literally lift up my essence in vain. So this is referring to, this is the same language, okay, although there it says shame. It says lotisat shem et shmi l'shav, okay, do not use my name in vain. Here it says do not use my soul, my essence, my being in vain, okay, and this is referring to taking false oaths. This is referring to taking false oaths. Who did not take false oaths on my name or on my essence. And we know that when someone takes an oath in the Tanakh, why is this stupid beach ball still going on? When someone takes an oath in the Tanakh, that essentially what they usually say is Hai, and then the name of their God. And if you're taking an oath in the name of Yahweh, say Hai, and then the actual name of God, the Tetragrammaton, and that means as Yahweh lives. So that's the way in the Tanakh people took oaths. They took oaths. We saw it. Even I think Joseph took an oath on the name of Pharaoh. We saw that I think last week or 2 weeks ago. Joseph said, "Hi Pharaoh," as Pharaoh lives. Okay, it's like saying, "It's on your mom's life, on my mom's life, I swear." Right? So on God's life, I swear. Blah blah blah. That's how you took an oath. You took an oath on your God, or sometimes on your master. So, although it's known that the pharaohs in Egypt were considered gods, okay? So if you raise your hand, lo nasash l'shav nafshi, okay, who did not lift up or raise up my essence in vain, in a false oath. Okay, so since you take an oath on the name of God, on the true name of God, or on his, that's like taking an oath on his essence, right? It's like saying it's God lives, okay? So if you do that falsely, then you're taking a false oath. Velo nishba lemirma, and did not swear in lemirma, deceitfully, okay, or falsely. So that's what this is referring to. This is Psalms 24, verse 4. My God, why is this stupid thing taking so damn long? Unbelievable. Maybe I should go out and come back in. I'll give it another minute. I've never had to take this long before. It's really annoying. I don't know what's going on. I may have to quit and come back in. It's really crazy. I've never, ever had to take this long before. Okay, I'm going to restart and come back in. Okay, are we back? Okay, I guess we're back. All right. I don't know. It froze up. I'm gonna have to write. This only happens when I run Streamyard. Okay. It only happens when I run Streamyard, and this has gone on every single week. We have a situation where, first of all, I can't run Task Manager because I'm not on a PC. But thank you, Phil. I know you're like me. You're a computer guy, but I guess it's an equivalent Task Manager here. But I never run it on Mac because I never had this problem with any. And plus the whole thing's frozen. But at any rate, maybe that's what I'll have to do next time. Anywho, I guess we're back, and I think I'm gonna have to write Streamyard a an email like to their tech support team because this is happening every single week, and it's really getting annoying. Okay, let's see if everything is working here. So banners, I got to put this thing up. Does that go up? No. I guess that one goes up, and I guess that's good. All right. I don't know when I froze. I have no idea. But let me just share the screen again. So we're going to do window, Torah, share. Okay. And I hope we're back. So, right. So in Genesis 46, and sound is good. Okay. Very good. Hello, Martha. Nice to see you, Martha. Okay. So did Chico take off? Usually these types usually take off when their god is insulted. I have no idea. All right. Okay, so we're in Genesis 46. So, right. So now Jacob is going to come down to Egypt. And I guess what I'm going to do at this point is, because we have to get through 50, we're not going to do it, I don't think, but I'll go into kind of express mode, minimal commentary. And although, of course, we know that never happens, but I'll try. And let's try to get through at least a couple of chapters here, because we are supposed to finish the end. We are supposed to get through the end of Genesis. So let's try to do it. Okay. וייסע ישראל וכל אשר לו ויבוא בבאר שבע ויזבח זבחים לאלוהי אביהו יצחק. Okay. So Jacob, all right, so we got to add this now to our, so there we go. So already I'm doing commentary. We have to add this to our journeys of the patriarchs. Patriarch journeys. So when last we left Jacob, so yeah, Jacob had come back to Yitzchak in Kiryat Arba, in Hebron, where the cave of Machpelah is. Now he's going back down to Egypt, and he's going to pass through Beersheba. Okay, so Beersheba is mentioned. Oops. Second here. So Beersheba is mentioned a number of times, but the last place we saw Beersheba, that's where Isaac was living. Okay, before he relocated at some point to Kiryat Arba, it seems. Okay, so Isaac in Genesis 26 was in Beersheba. So Israel and all of his household, again paraphrasing here, they came to Beersheba. And he burnt offerings. He slaughtered offerings to the God of his father Yitzhak. So we should add that. So that's Genesis 46:1. So Genesis 46:1. And we're missing some here, but it's okay. Genesis 46:1. So we didn't follow Joseph down to Egypt. Oops. Let's try that again. Genesis 46:1. And this is going to be Yaakov. And this is going to be Beersheba. And did he build an altar? Well, he didn't build an altar, but he sacrificed animals. Does it say explicitly he built an altar? It doesn't say explicitly, so we'll put it as with an asterisk. Okay. And so we should say Yaakov on his way to Egypt stopped here to slaughter offerings to the God of Isaac. This, okay. And we should say this is where Isaac lived. For a period of time, maybe even his primary residence. Okay, so basically, Jacob stops off on his way to Beersheba. If you look at the map of Israel, we can get an idea of where he's going. So, map of Israel. Good enough. Oh, okay. So how do I get to the actual map? Okay, no, I want these stupid cookies. Okay, so here is Beersheba, right here. Okay, here is Hebron. So this is where Jacob was. He was in Hebron. He's going down to Egypt. He's going to end up in Goshen, which is going to be around, I guess this is the Nile River here, Al Arish, yeah, I believe. And so he'll end up, I guess, in this area here. Okay. So he's going from Hebron to Beersheba, and then he's going to end up going, like, if he takes a direct route, over here. Okay. So Beersheba is on the way to Egypt. And so he's passing through the place that his father lived in for many years. We don't know how many. I mean, maybe we could figure it out. But for many years. And so that's why it says, so that was primarily, let's see if Beersheba mentioned anywhere else in my list. Beersheba. So Abraham was there for a while. But then I guess Isaac was there for a long while, okay? Until Yaakov came back from, right, because Yaakov, when he leaves his house, his father's house, when he runs away from Esau, he leaves Beersheba, because it says he left Beersheba and then he came to Bethel. Bethel here, this is where in Genesis 28 he has the dream of the Jacob's ladder dream. Okay, so Isaac was in Beersheba. So then when he comes back, he ends up back in Hebron, but it says Isaac was there. Okay, so, and it seems that's where Isaac died, in Hebron. And now, so Yaakov is now leaving Hebron, and he's passing back to Beersheba. Beersheba is where he left. That Beersheba is basically where Jacob grew up, right? That's where Jacob grew up, because that's where Isaac was when Jacob ran away from Esau, from his brother Esau. So it would seem, if I'm not mistaken, it would seem that Beersheba is Yaakov's birthplace. It's where he grew up. It's where his father's house was as he was a child and as he grew up until he ran away from Esau. Okay, and so he's leaving Hebron and he's passing through Beersheba, his birthplace or his place where he grew up, and I guess his birthplace actually. And he is now going to, sacrifice. He's going to bring sacrifices in Beersheba to the God of his father Isaac, right? So it's almost like you're going back to your hometown. It's like he's passing through his hometown. He's in honor of his father who's already deceased. He's now going to bring sacrifices. Okay. All right. Mac has an activity monitor. Thank you, Whitey boy. I will look into that. It's a good idea, actually. But the question is, how do I bring up the activity monitor if I have the beach ball going? All right, let's see. Mac activity monitor. How do I bring it up? Close an unresponsive app or process. The activity monitor app. So I can't even get if I have the beach ball going. You can use activity monitor to quit a process, even if it's in a loop or not responding. Okay. Force quit. All right, I'll look into it another time. Activity monitor. Fair enough. Okay, so right. So verse 2. Vayomer Elohim la Yisrael b'marot halayla, in visions of the night. Vayomer Yaakov, Yomer Hineni. As a lot of commentators point out, Jacob is the only one who's called his old name after he's given his new name. Of course, I don't really like that comment because it's a completely new name. The other ones, like Abraham, it was just a letter added. It was essentially still a similar name. Avram to Avraham had a different meaning, but it was essentially a similar name. Here we have two completely different names. So it's not, I don't think the analogy really works. But okay. Yomer Hineni. So now God is going to appear to Jacob before he leaves the land of Israel down to Egypt. Yomer Anochi Ha'el Elohei Avicha Al Tira Mirda Mitzrayma Ki leroi gadol asimcha sham. So he says, I am God. I am the God of your father, meaning Isaac. Remember, he's sacrificing in Beersheba, his birthplace. He says explicitly he went to sacrifice to the God of his father Isaac. That's over here. Atira, do not fear. Mirda mitzrayma, do not fear from going down to regarding going down to Egypt. Ki leroe gadol asimcha sham, because I will turn you into a great nation there, into a large nation or a great nation there. Okay. So this is really the second time that Jacob has had to flee. He had to flee his brother Esau, and now from Beersheba he has to flee down to Egypt. And both times before he leaves his home, before he leaves the land of Israel, the land that's promised to him and his descendants, God appears to him and tells him, basically reassures him. Okay, so when he was fleeing from his father Isaac's house from Beersheba, he went to Bethel. That's where he had the Jacob's ladder dream, the angels going up and down. And now, as he's leaving Hebron, passing through Beersheba, it's almost like the reverse. Well, Hebron is not really near Bethel, but no, Bethel is near Jerusalem, and I'd say maybe even the same as Jerusalem, although I won't get into that right now. But so now he's going in the opposite direction. He's going south. He's going southwest instead of northeast as he did before. And God is appearing to him again and telling him not to fear. Okay. Anochi ered imcha mitzrayma wa anochi alcha gam alo wa Yosef yashit yado al ainecha. I am going down. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will come up with you. Alcha gam ala. I will also bring you up. Alcha gram alo. Okay, I will certainly also bring you up. Of course, referring to Jacob's descendants. Jacob never leaves the land of Egypt. He dies in Egypt. His body is brought up, as we'll see at the end of Genesis if we get to it. Yosef yashith yado al ainecha, and God and Joseph will place his hands on your eyes, meaning when you die, Joseph will be the one to close your eyes. Joseph will be with you on your deathbed. And we, in fact, see that that's the case. That's in Genesis 49. Okay, verse 5. Hakham Yaakov mibe'er Shava wa isu b'nei Israel et Yaakov avihem wa et tapam wa et nishehem ba'araloth asher shalach paro baseth oto. Okay, so Jacob got up. Jacob arose from Beersheba. And the children of Israel carried their father Jacob. So now it's his children who are kind of the active ones, right? They're not the focus, but they're the subject here. So he's an old man, okay, and he's the one being taken care of or being looked after by his children. So they carried the father and the little ones and the women in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to take them, to lift them up, to carry them. Okay, verse 6. Wa'ithu et miknehem wa'et rechusham asher rachshu ba'eretz Kinaan wa'yavo Mitzrayma Yaakov v'chol zar'o ito. And they took their cattle and their property, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and they came to Egypt, Yaakov and all of his seed, his descendants with him. And again, seed, as a friend of mine, a Karaite leaning friend of mine many years pointed out, often refers to the male descendants, seed, right? Like sperm, okay? Sperm is what passes on the male line from one generation to the next. So it is sometimes used by extension to include females. And when we do get the list of the 70 souls that came down to Egypt, there are only two females listed. I'm sorry, 3 females listed. And that is No, only two females listed. That's Dinah. Well, are the wives listed? I don't remember now, but it's Dinah and Serach. I won't look it up now. I can't remember the wives listed. Yes, I think the wives are listed. But the only two descendants of Yaakov, female descendants of Yaakov that are listed, there are only two, and that's Dinah, Jacob's daughter, and then there's Serach, who is the daughter of, is it Asher, I think, if I remember correctly. So the point being that maybe when it's saying his seed here, it doesn't mean only the male descendants, it also includes the female descendants. That's a big discussion, which I don't know if we'll have time this year. I've discussed it in previous years, that when the 70 are listed, why are there only two females listed? I mean, out of all of the 70 descendants, but that also includes Yaakov himself, and it includes but it includes the sons, the grandsons. Why are there only two females in that entire list? But I don't know if we'll have a chance to get to that. Verse 7. Banao ubnei banao ito ubenotav ubenot banao v'chol zera'o evi ito mitzrayima. So his sons and his sons with him, his daughters and the daughters of his sons, v'chol zera'o, and all of his progeny, Hivi ito mitzrayima. So again, from the context here, because it's speaking about his daughters and the daughters of his sons, this again would imply that the word zera here, even though in some contexts it means specifically the male descendants, here it means all of the descendants, right? Because it says explicitly his daughters and the daughters of his sons. Okay, he brought with him to Egypt. Now again, this is a very strange statement because it says his daughters. There's only one daughter that's mentioned. We're going to get an explicit list of all the people who go down to Egypt. Okay, and there's only one daughter that's mentioned, and that's Dinah. We've of course heard about Dinah before. That's in the story of Dinah and Shem, when Dinah is raped by Shem, the son of Hamor, and then it says also is the daughters of his sons. There's only one granddaughter mentioned in the entire list. Maybe we should look at that right now. Let's find it. Terms get to shove reasons. Jethro, so they journeys 400 years. But El Beersheva, sons of Jacob. I think this is it. So these are the 70, right? So okay, these are the females. So I marked off the females in purple here. So the Serach, the daughter of Asher, that's the only female, that's the only granddaughter that's mentioned. And then Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, that's the only daughter that's mentioned. And then Leah is mentioned. So something's a little bit strange in this list, to be honest. Okay. And we've spoken about it before. Maybe there were more than 70, and the daughters, the females, are not included in the list because we're the concubines. I mean, we know that Rachel is dead when they go down to Egypt, but are Zilpah and Bilhah dead? We didn't get any mention of that, not that I remember. And also, it just doesn't seem logical that Jacob had 12 daughters, 12 sons and only one daughter. Okay, so I guess that's possible, but only one granddaughter? Okay, each of the 12 children only had males except for one who had a single female. So something is very, very suspicious in this list. But then the question can be raised is, if Serach, the only granddaughter that's mentioned, why is she even mentioned? She doesn't really have much of a role anywhere in the entire Tanakh. She's not an important figure. So there's a lot of questions. All right, let's go on. Verse 80, and now we get into that list here. Okay, so these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt: Yaakov, Uvanav, Bachor Yaakov, Reuven, Yaakov and his sons. And here I've listed all 70. There's a little bit of some questions regarding the count, but this is the way I figured it out. Okay, so here we have oops, where'd it go? Okay, here we have the 70. that are mentioned. Okay, so we have the well, you get the idea. Okay, a second here. Okay, there. Okay, so now we're going to go through that list. I'm just going to run through it quite quickly because we have it summarized there in the spreadsheet. Okay, Uvnei Reuven, Hanoch, Upalu, Hetzron, Wakarmi. Uvnei Shimon. I think I'm going to actually skip it because we have a lot to cover, and it's just a list of names. Not that it's not important, but we really spoke about it, and it's really summarized here. Okay. If anyone wants access to the spreadsheet, as I said before, please let me know, and I can send you the link. It's you can look at the spreadsheet, you can read it, you can't modify it. I think I left the possibility of leaving comments. Let me see. Just a viewer. No, I didn't leave. I guess I didn't want annoying comments. Okay, but so send me an email if you have a comment, okay, or a text message. Okay. One second. All right, so let's skip ahead. Because again, it's all summarized here. Okay. So these are the 70. All right. So yeah, we're going to skip right ahead. Okay. I'll skip to here. Verse 26. So all of the souls, the individuals who came with Yaakov to Egypt, Yotzei Yericho, who came out of his loins, in other words, who were his direct descendants, Milvad Nashe Bnei Yaakov, aside from the wives of the children of Yaakov, Kol Nefesh Shishim V'Shesh. Okay, so 66. Okay, so this is interesting. Hold on. Milvad Nashe Bnei Yaakov, Kol Nefesh Shishim V'Shesh. So aside from the wives of the sons of Jacob, so I guess they're not included in the count of 70. Kol Nefesh Shishim V'Shesh. Let me just see. Let me just change this here. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay, so this is not counting his son's wives. Why is it not counting his son's wives? Because they were not Jacob's direct descendants, right? They were the wives, so not included in the count. But it seems pretty explicit, right? So we don't see really any other daughters or granddaughters being mentioned. It's kind of strange. Verse 27, Bnei Yosef asher yulad lo b'Mitzrayim nefesh shnayim, kol nefesh lebeit Yaakov ba'a Mitzrayim shivim. So the sons of Joseph were already there, Ephraim and Manasseh, or Manasseh and Ephraim. That brings the count up to 70. Again, I'm not going to go through the exact numbering there. I've done it previously, and we've spoken about it. This is the way I see the numbering system. So to make a long story short, these are the 70. And they do not include Jacob himself. One second here. They include Leah and Dinah. They include Serach, the granddaughter. And that's it. That was my counting system. Okay. I'm not going to belabor it here. Okay, so now verse 28. Verse 28, ואת יהודה שלח לפניו אל יוסף להורות לפניו גישונה ויבוא ארצה גושן. So Judah he sent before him, in other words, Jacob sent it before him to Joseph, so that lehorot, to instruct or to show. So basically, in other words, he sent Judah ahead so that Joseph can show him where Goshen is, and then they came to the land of Goshen. Verse 29, we saw Yosef merkavto ויעל לקראת ישראל אביו גושנה. So Yaakov saddled up his chariot and he went up to Israel, his father, in Goshen. וירא אליו ויפול על צווארו ויבך על צווארו עוד. And he saw him, and he fell upon his neck, and he cried upon his neck even more, or for a long time. So who's the subject here, and who's the object? It would seem that Joseph, because he's the subject here, it would continue for him to be the subject here. But it's honestly, it's not 100% clear, because sometimes the object, so the direct object, well, it's not the direct object, it's actually the indirect object, okay, could now end up being the subject here. Let me just read it one more time to myself. ויאסור יוסף מרכבתו ויעל לקראת ישראל אביו גושנה וירא אליו ויפול על צוואריו ויבך על צוואריו עוד. I'm going to guess Joseph is the subject of the entire verse, although it could really go either way. But since it makes sense either way, we'll go by the more logical one, which is that the subject at the beginning of the sentence is the subject throughout the sentence. Let's just look at Robert Alter on that one. So that's 4629. See how he translates it. $46.29. Yeah, so he does. He keeps the subject as Joseph. And I'm going to guess that his comment here is about regarding that ambiguity. So that's page 496. Warrant 96. Oops. Where is it? 29. Harnessed. So maybe he's not saying that appeared before him. I don't know. We're not going to resolve it now. It doesn't matter at this point. Okay. Verse 30. ויאמר ישראל אל יוסף עמותה הפעם אחרי ראותי את פניך כי עודך חי Yomer, and Israel said to Joseph, literally, Amutta apam, this time I will die, but that's not what it means. Now, basically, he's expressing the idea of now I can die. Now that I've seen your face, I can die. Now that I've seen your face, and I know that you're still alive, now I can die. It's basically, again, paraphrasing. Okay. Verse 31. ויאמר יוסף אל אחיו ואל בית אביו אעלה ואגידה לפרעה. So Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's house, to his father's entire household, let me go up and tell Pharaoh what's going on. In other words, ואומרה אליו אחי ובית אבי אשר בארץ כנען באו אלי. And I will tell him that my brothers and my father's entire household, my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. Verse 32. وَحَأَنْ نَشِيمَ رُعَي سَأُنْ كِي أَنْشَي مِقْنَي هَيُّ وَسُنْعَمْ وَبِكَرَمْ وَخَلْ أَشَرْ لَهَمْ هَيْوِيُّ. And these men, in other words, Jacob's family, were ro'ei tz'on, they were shepherds. Ki anshe mikneh hayu. They were, mikneh is livestock, so they were, I don't know, they were livestock owners, right? They cared for livestock. And their flocks and their cattle and all that was theirs, they brought along. Okay. Verse 33. وَهَيَا كِي يِقْرَأ لَكَمْ פרעה وَأَمَرْ مَا مَعَسَيْكَمْ. And so this is now Joseph giving instructions to his father and to his brothers. So when Pharaoh calls for you and asks you what you do for a living, okay? Verse 34, وَمَرْتَمْ أَنْشَيْ مِقْنَيَ هَيُّ عَبَدَكَ مِنْ نِئُرَيْنُ وَعَدْ أَتَى גَمْ أَنَحْنُ وَגَمْ أَبُوتَيْنُ. You shall say to him, we are livestock keepers, or your servants have been your slaves, your servants, meaning, again, this is the way people spoke to those in higher rank. Okay, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth until now. Both us and our fathers and our forefathers, our ancestors. Semicolon. Ba'avur tishvu be'eretz Goshen. Ki to'avat Misraim kor ro'ei sa'on. And you'll say this in order that you can live in the land of Goshen, because it was an abomination to the Egyptians, to Egypt. All those who took care of sheep, all those who were shepherds, were an abomination to the Egyptians. So it's usually pointed out. I mean, the word that goes around is that the reason for this is that the Egyptians, one of their gods was in the shape of a sheep. I'm not an Egyptologist, so I can't neither confirm nor deny that. But I don't know, that explanation always seemed a bit contrived to me. So I don't know. Let's see what Robert Alter has to say about this one. 34. Okay, so he says, this claim is puzzling. Oops. Oh, darn it. Oops. Let's try that again. Okay. This claim is puzzling. Hello? Is it not highlighting? All right, whatever. This claim is puzzling because there is an indication in the next chapter that Pharaoh had his own flocks. See 47:6. And there is no extra biblical evidence that shepherding was a taboo profession among the Egyptians. As the categorical language of the last sentence here appears to suggest, the least convoluted explanations that the Egyptians, who were by and large sedentary agriculturalists, because they had the Nile River, and were large urban centers, considered the semi-nomadic herdsmen from the north as inferiors, an attitude actually reflected in Egyptian sources, and so preferred to keep them segregated in the pasture region of the Nile Delta, not far from the Sinai border. Okay, so gives his own explanation. I guess let's go for this cultural thingy, cultural background Torah. Let's see what they have to say. I don't use this one very much, but it's good to ligavein, to mix and match, to mix it up a little bit. So that's Genesis 46:34. We can close this. We can close this. Leave that open. Genesis 36. I don't know. Take a stab at it. Page 200. Whoa, Matthew. What's going on there? Okay. Let's try 115. Genesis 46, 125. 130. Here we go. So the end of Genesis 46, 34. Okay, so this is what our cultural backgrounds Tanakh has to say. All shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians. By identifying themselves as shepherds, Jacob's clan offers assurance that they are not coming to take Egyptian farmland or get involved in politics. Okay, that's an interesting take. Flocks and herds were kept by the Egyptians during all periods and were used for meat, milk, and wool or hides, as well as for some sacrifices. More cattle than sheep or goat. They are depicted in reliefs, models, and tomb paintings. Remains are found in excavation and deities associated with the ram and the cow, but not sheep or goats, all demonstrating the pervasive penetration of these animals into Egyptian culture. In contrast, sheep and goats do not figure prominently in fables, metaphors, or personal names, which indicates that they were considered rather common. It is difficult to ascertain whether shepherds were detested because of their association with foreigners, with a low status in society, or with sheep and goats as inferior animals that threaten farmland. Extant Egyptian records offer no insight on this. Okay, so again, what's absent from this explanation is the general explanation that we usually hear, which is that they thought shepherds were an abomination because one of the gods of Egypt was a sheep, which again, I never found that explanation to be particularly compelling. And we've now read both Robert Alter's explanation and this cultural backgrounds explanation, and neither of them mention that fact. So I'm guessing that that's just like a, one of those memes that's kind of passed around. So we have here an Egyptian painting at Beni Hassan of man with goats. Many depictions of flocks and herds have been discovered, demonstrating the pervasive penetration of these animals into Egyptian culture. It is difficult to ascertain whether shepherds were detested because of their association with foreigners, with a low status in society, or with sheep and goats as inferior animals that threaten farmland. Okay, well, there you go. And that brings us to the end of chapter 46. And we still have a lot to go, but I might just stop now. Where are we supposed to get up to? How long have we been going at it? Almost 3 hours. I think I might stop now. So we're up to 47, which means that we haven't even gotten to our Parsha. Oh, well. That's life. So I'm deciding whether I should read through this. 47. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read through. I'm not going to make any commentary. And we'll get to the end of 47, and then we're going to stop. Okay? I promise I'm not going to make any commentary. Yeah, right. Okay, we're in 47. Please follow along in the English or in your favorite language, such as Serbian. Verse 1, ויבוא יוסף ויגד לפרעה ויאמר אבי ואחי וצאנם ובקרם וכל אשר להם באו מארץ כנען והינם בארץ גושן. Verse 2, ומקצה how לקח 5 נשים ויסירם לפני פרעה. ויאמר פרעה אל אחיו מה מעשיכם? ויאמרו אל פרעה רועה צאן עבדיך גם אנחנו גם אבותינו. So they're telling Pharaoh that they are shepherds. ויאמרו אל פרעה לגור בארץ בנו כי אין מרעה לצאן אשר לעבדיך כי כבד הרעב בארץ כנען, ועתה ישבו נא עבדיך בארץ גושן. So they're asking, they're pleading with Pharaoh to live in the land of Goshen, or requesting from him. ויאמר פרעה אל יוסף לאמור אביך ואחיך באו אליך. So Pharaoh is happy. Here, your family's come to you. Verse 6, ארץ מצרים לפניך היא במיטב הארץ הושב את אביך ואת אחיך ישבו בארץ גושן, ואם יערת ויש בם אנשי חיל ושמתם שרי מקנה על אשר לי. So this is interesting. So it couldn't be that much of an abomination, because he says, if you know any of these shepherds that are talented people on Shechayo, then place them over my livestock. Okay. Why יבא יוסף את יעקב אביו ויעמידהו לפני פרעה ויברך יעקב את פרעה. So Jacob gives a blessing to Paro. Verse 8. ויאמר פרעה אל יעקב כמה ימי שני חייך. ויאמר יעקב אל פרעה ימי שני מגורי 30 ומעט שנה מעט ורעים היו ימי שני חיי ולא השיגו את ימי שני חיי אבותיי בימי מגוריהם. So Jacob says he's 130 years old. We saw earlier that Jacob is going to die at the age of 147. So that means he spends his 17 last years in Egypt. Ironically, and I don't think I guess there's no coincidences, but I think it's really just kind of coincidence. Joseph was 17 years old when he was sold to Egypt. So Joseph's first 17 years were with Jacob, and Jacob's last 17 years were with Joseph. So Jacob, out of his entire life of 147 years, spent exactly 34 of those years with Joseph, with his son Joseph. 17 when he was born until the age of 17, and now the last 17 years of Jacob's life. Verse 10, ויברך יעקב את פרעה ויצא מלפני פרעה. So he blesses him and then leaves. Okay? In other words, I think the idea here is Jacob is just saying what he's supposed to say to accomplish the goal, which is to get Pharaoh to, say, hey, welcome, we're happy to have you here, mi casa es tu casa, and, have a nice life in Goshen. Okay, sometimes it's better to speak less rather than more. Verse 11, why yoshev Yosef et aviu wa'et echa וייתן להם אחוזה בארץ מצרים במיטב הארץ בארץ רעמסס כאשר ציווה פרעה. So he settles them in the city of Ramses, which is interesting. We know it's in Goshen. Ramses is going to be the place that the Israelites leave in Exodus chapter 12 when they exit Egypt. They leave from Ramses and they go, their first stop on their journey is called Sukkah. And we know that they had to build the storage cities of, it'll say in Exodus, of Ramses and Pitom. So this is going to be one of the cities where they end up being enslaved, and it's going to be the place that they later leave Egypt from. And that's in the book of Exodus. Kashet siwa paro ויכלכל יוסף את אביו ואת אחיו ואת כל בית אביו להם לפי הטף. So basically Joseph takes care of them. He supports them financially. Verse 13, ולחם אין בכל הארץ כי כבד הרעב מאוד ותלה ארץ מצרים וארץ כנען מפני הרעב. Verse 14, why ילקט Yosef et kol hakesef. Okay, so now we see Joseph, acting like the Jewish, businessman. He is definitely, playing the role that Jews have played in the courts of kings throughout history. Okay, he's like, now he's going to be basically the money man. He's basically going to be like one of the top courtiers. We know he's second in command in Egypt, and he's going to take care of business for Pharaoh, and he's going to make Pharaoh very rich. Verse 14, وَيَلَقِّتْ يوسف את כל הכסף הנמצא בארץ מצרים ובארץ כנען בשבר אשר הם שוברים ויבא יוסף את כסף ביתה פרעה. So Yosef makes Pharaoh very rich. ויתום הכסף מארץ מצרים ומארץ כנען ויבוא כל מצרים אל יוסף לאמור הבה לנו לחם ולמה נמות נגדך כי אפס כסף. We run out of money. Now what? We don't want to die. Verse 16, ויאמר יוסף הבו מקניכם ואדנה לכם ומקניכם עם אפס כסף. If you run out of money, then bring your livestock and I'll take that. You can buy food, you can barter for food with your livestock. Verse 17, ויביאו את מקניהם אל יוסף וייתן להם יוסף לחם בסוסים ובמקנה הצאן ובמקנה הבקר ובחמורים וינהלם בלחם בכל מקניהם בשנה ההיא. So basically he bought out all their livestock and gave them food in return. It's nice to have a monopoly, right? You can do pretty well. You can do pretty well if you have a monopoly. Okay. Especially if it's a monopoly on food. Verse 18, ותיתום השנה ההיא ויבוא אליו בשנה השנית ויאמרו לו לא נתאחד מאדוני כי אם תם הכסף והמקנה הבהמה אל אדוני לא נשאר לפני אדוני בלתי עם גביעתנו ואדמתנו. So we've run out of money. We've sold you all our livestock. The only thing left we have is our land and our very bodies, ourselves. And Joseph can take both of them for Pharaoh. Verse 19, למה נמות לעיניך גם אנחנו וגם אדמתנו קנה אותנו ואת אדמתנו בלחם ונהיה אנחנו ואדמתנו עבדים לפרעה ותן זרע ונהיה ולא נמות והאדמה לא תשם. The land will not become desolate. So they're basically saying, take us as slaves and our land. ויקן יוסף את כל אדמת מצרים לפרעה כי מכרו מצרים איש שדהו כי חזק עליהם הרעב ותהי ארץ לפרעה. So basically Pharaoh buys all of the land. So now all of the land of Egypt becomes, it's very interesting, right? It goes into the hands of Pharaoh. It's no longer privately owned. It's owned by the state. We basically have communism here. Verse 21. ואת העם העביר אותו לערים מקצה גבול מצרים ועד קצהו. And then he transferred, so he purchases all the land. I mean, those of you in America, who are into, they call them conspiracy theories. I don't like that word because a lot of them are really true. But isn't this exactly what's going on in the United States? Okay, verse 21. وאת העם. So he buys all the land from all of the Egyptians, and he transfers all the Egyptians off of their land into the big cities. He concentrates them into the big cities. My God, if that is not exactly what's going on in the United States of America over, let's say, the past 100 years, then I don't know what it is. That describes the United States of America to a T. Verse 22, רק אדמת הכהנים לא קנה כי חוק לכהנים את פרעה ואכלו את חוקם אשר נתן להם פרעה על כן לא מכרו את אדמתם. Okay, the only ones who were exempt from this were the priests. Obviously, we're talking about the priests to the Egyptian gods. They were able to keep their land. Ironically, in the conception of the Torah, it's going to be the priests and the Levites who have no land inheritance, and they are supported by the donations of the Israelites. Okay, so here in Egypt, the Kohanim, the priests have land. In Israel, it's going to be just the opposite. The priests have no land of their own. Only the Levitical cities, which are just a small amount of cities. Verse 23, why yomer Yosef el ha'am hen qaniti etchem hayom wa'et admatchem lefar'o hen lachem zera zaratem et adama. So I own everything, but you're still going to work the land. So basically they become serfs on their own land. They're living in the cities, but they're still going to have to work the land. Okay? Verse 24. وَحَيَا بِتْבُؤَتْ ונתתם חמישית לפרעה וארבע הידות יהיה לכם לזרע השדה ולאכלכם ולאשר בבתיכם ולאכול לטפכם. So you're going to be serfs on your own land, and the land is no longer yours, but you're going to work the land, and 20% goes to Pharaoh. So Joseph is really, he's basically taken over all of Egypt for Pharaoh. He's turned Egypt basically into a giant serfdom, where the people are serfs in their own land. They don't own the land anymore, but they work it, and they get to keep 4/5 for themselves, and they have to give 1/5 to Pharaoh. And it's not even their land, it's Pharaoh's land. Verse 25, ויאמרו, וידבנו, ימצא חן בעיני אדוני, והיינו עבדים לפרעה. And they say, let us be slaves to Pharaoh. וישם אותה יוסף לחוק עד היום הזה על אדמת מצרים לפרעה לחומש, רק אדמת הכהנים לבדם לא הייתה לפרעה. So basically they agree in verse 25 and 26. It says it's a rule, or it's a law until this very day, that 1/5 of all the produce goes to Pharaoh. Okay, and then we have this phrase ad hayom hazeh. Oops, hold on. What happened here? Oh no, tell me it's freezing up again. Uh-oh. Hold on. No, I guess not. Okay, so this phrase ad hayom hazeh is a very loaded phrase. What does it mean until this day? Okay, it means it seems clear. It means when the Torah was written down, which is a couple hundred years later, right? Okay, verse 27. Why Yeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen ve'ye'ahazu ba wa'yifru wa'yirbu ma'od. So they lived in the land of Goshen, and they were fruitful and multiplied. Verse 28. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim sheva esrei shana. So Jacob lived for 17 years in the land of Egypt, as we said earlier. Vayehi yemei Yaakov shnei chayav sheva shanim wa'arba'im wa'ma'at shana. So he lived for 147 years. Verse 29. ויקרבו ימי ישראל למות ויקרא לבנו ליוסף ויאמר לו אם נא מצאתי חן בעיניך שים נא ידך תחת ירכי ועשית עם עדי חסד ואמת אל נא תקברני במצרים. So Yaakov makes his son Joseph swear that he will not be buried in Egypt. Yaakov does not want to be buried in Egypt, and at the end of Genesis, the book of Genesis, in chapter 50, we'll see Joseph also says the same thing. When you get out of here, take my bones out of here. Neither of them want to be buried in Egypt. They want to rest, their final resting place, to be back in the land of Israel. Okay, and we have this famous phrase, place your hand under my thigh. We see this a bunch of times throughout the Tanakh. This was the way that one, took a solemn oath. This may be a euphemism for placing one's hand on the other one's genitals. Like, I swear to me on my, on my thingy that you're going to do this for me, right? I mean, that's quite a swear. We read that already, verse 30. So take me out of Egypt when I die and bury me with my fathers. And Joseph says, I will do according to your wishes, literally according to your words. Verse 31, why Yomer why Yishava lo? So he made Joseph swear, why Yishtahu Israel ar Rosh Hamita. And Israel bowed down at the head of the bed. So this already implies that Israel is on his deathbed, right? What does it mean on the head of the bed? Why is he speaking to his son on the bed? Jacob is already on his deathbed, and that leads us right into 48. where we have the story of Ephraim and Manasseh, and basically we have the old switcheroo here. So Manasseh is the firstborn, and Ephraim is the secondborn, but Jacob reverses them and brings them up a level. As I've mentioned many times, they become as if they're sons of Jacob. And we see a pattern throughout all the Tanakh about the firstborn losing his status as firstborn, and one of the other sons, in this case the secondborn, attaining the status of firstborn. We start with Joseph himself. Joseph essentially achieved the status of firstborn. If we had time to do the blessings in Genesis 49, maybe we'll do it next week. I don't know. I guess we'll go on to the book of Exodus. We would see that. But basically, that's a common theme, right? That the firstborn is switched. We even see an explicit switch that the Levites, the firstborn, belong. We see the whole thing when we get to the book of Exodus. The final plague is the killing of the firstborn of the Egyptians, and therefore God says, Yahweh says that since I killed the firstborn, or when I killed the firstborn of Egypt, I took the firstborn of Israel for myself. But that is later, the firstborn are later explicitly, and it's done, the numbers are worked out. I think it was in excess of 3,000, was it? Or 300? I think 3,000 if I remember correctly. So they're switched with the Levites. The Levites take the place of the firstborn. So this is throughout the Tanakh, such as with Esau and Yaakov, we see the switching, right? Yaakov is the secondborn, but he attains the status of firstborn. Joseph is the 11th born, but he essentially attains the status of firstborn. Ephraim is the secondborn, but he attains the status of firstborn. And we could even see throughout other parts of the Tanakh. For instance, David. Okay, when Samuel comes to search out the new king, then Jesse brings all of his sons before Samuel, and Samuel says to each one, no, this is not him, this is not him, this is not him. And then there was one, the little baby that was out tending to the flock, and he brings him in and he says, this is the one, right? So David was the youngest of all of the brothers and the smallest of all of the brothers, but he ends up attaining the status of king, right? So we constantly have this theme throughout the Tanakh of the smaller ones, the non-firstborn, the underdog, attaining eventually in his life the status of the head or of the firstborn. Okay, we saw in the case of Saul. Okay, Saul was large. It says he was head and shoulders. I'm paraphrasing, above others, right? He was a very big, tall man, and he ended up being thrown out off of his perch and replaced with the youngest of Jesse's sons, David, right? So there's this constant theme of those who might, at first glance, to human beings seem to be the biggest, the strongest, the firstborn, the best. They are constantly thrown off of their perch, and then the underdog, the smallest, the weakest, at least from physical point of view, are elevated by Yahweh. Okay, so that's a theme that we see throughout the Tanakh. All right, that's the end of Genesis 48. I think we're going to stop here because it is getting late. We still have, I'm sorry, we didn't read 48, but that is Genesis 48. In 49, we have the blessings, which are very poetic. There's a lot to say about them, but they're kind of hard to go through because it's very poetic language, and there's a lot of divergent translations, which means, as I've said many times, if you look at 3 translations of the Torah into English or any language, and you see 3 different translations, or you see 3 translations that are kind of similar but don't really match, you know that nobody knows how to translate it. It means that each translation took their own, best guess, or their best educated guess. So, and we see this throughout the blessings here. You look at different translations, you'll see, like, I wouldn't say radically different translations, but noticeably different translations. Then Jacob dies, and then in 50 we have the wrapping up of the book of Genesis. So Jacob's burial, and then ultimately the death of Joseph. And then next time, we'll start with Exodus. It's hard to believe that we're already up to the book of Exodus, but we will be next time. Be'ezarat Yahweh. So with this, I'm going to end it. Any comments, any questions before we finish it off? Before we finish off the study? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Going thrice? Okay, well, in that case, I thank you all for joining me. Be'ezarat Yahweh. We'll see you again next week. And I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov, depending on where you are in the world. Again, please get the word out about the study. Share it, like it, do all that, sharey, likey, subscribey stuff. and let anybody know that if they want to watch the study, it stays permanently on YouTube on the Karaite Insights channel. They can go back and watch the study at the YouTube link. It also stays on Facebook, as a matter of fact. And that's it. And let us pray for that Israel will reject its stubborn ways, return to Yahweh, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and so that Israel will be able to, eventually Israel will reach a state of redemption. But let's pray that the nation does so with as little pain and suffering as possible, that they learn what they need to learn the easy way rather than the hard way. And I'm specifically talking about what's going on in Gaza, which, if I were head of Israel, it would no longer exist after about 3 days. But I'm not. Instead, we have these Western aligned leaders, quote unquote leaders, who are running this slow trudge through Gaza, and hopefully they will achieve their goals. But I don't think it's setting us up for long-term success. At any rate, go back and listen to the original monologue if you're interested in more hearing my opinions about that. The other guy to look at, even though he's clearly rabbinical Jew, the only other one out there just about who's speaking some semblance of truth regarding, who's not an anti-Israel, anti-Semite, is Moshe Feiglin. Most of his stuff is in Hebrew, so I don't know. A lot of times he'll give translations, but if you look him up, then he's saying a lot of truth about what's really going on. So that's it. I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. We'll go out with some music as usual. And Be'ezarat Yahweh, we'll pick it up again next week. So let me get the music going here. And let's see what we got. Yeah, that always works. 1 second. Chuka Emek Adani, probably not. I'll probably just go on to the book of Exodus because I do kind of want to stick to the program. So probably most likely what will happen next week is we'll go right into the book of Exodus. So that's it. I am thinking about adding maybe talks a couple times a week in the morning, or at least in the morning my time. It might be in the middle of the night your time if you live in the US. But if that's the case, then I'll let everybody know. Okay. And then maybe we can go a little bit more in depth, those things that we can't cover on Shabbat. So any updates on that, I'll let you know. In the meantime, Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, and we'll go out with some music.
ציר לא קטיף לא ביד, אלוהים ליעקב בחרתנו, ותבחר ותפעיל את עליין, ותבחר אלוהים ליעקב בחרתנו, ותבחר ותפעיל את עליין. כאן חיים כאן המלך, כאן כל ארצנו תוליד, ובעמק ברחובות תפארת, יתנשא גם עליך נגלי. נשאנו בעמק ברחובות תפארת, יתנשא גם עליך נגלי. כי אנחנו שדך נתן, נמות מהכל גדול, אלוהים לשלטון בחרתנו, על לבן וכחול ואדום, אלוהים לשלטון בחרתנו, על לבן וכחול ואדום. אולי נפיק על הסביבון ואופן הכפות של אל אל, ממש לא טוב לשנות, להביא כל כך פותח